I once believed I'd give up anything for her until I caught her perfume lingering on another man's collar. Each morning, I wash strangers' cars, but it's my own secrets that quietly choke me. She claimed late nights at the office, but the hidden calls and receipts told a darker story. One name, one hotel key, one instant that obliterated our vows forever. Now I'm the man who haunts neon-lit corridors hunting for the proof she swore didn't exist. When love mutates into lies, truth is the only weapon that still matters, and I'm ready to unleash it, no matter who gets scorched in the process. Chapter 1. Seth was up before dawn, his breath coming in slow, measured puffs as he sat at the small kitchen table in his modest rental house. The pre-sunrise darkness cast long shadows on the faded linoleum floor. He gently stirred his coffee, eyes drifting to the family photo on the wall, a picture from his brief honeymoon with Helen 2 years prior. In the photo, Helen's radiant smile shone like a beacon. He had loved that smile, still did, but lately that beacon of warmth had begun to flicker. He took a sip of coffee, noticing how even the taste didn't bring the usual comfort. Memories of the past few months buzzed in his mind, from Helen's cold shoulders at night to the endless criticisms about small household chores. Seth exhaled, letting the swirl of confusion in his head settle. He suspected something had changed in their marriage, and not for the better, something intangible, yet impossible to ignore. But outside, the world beckoned. He glanced at the time on his phone, forced himself to finish the coffee, and stood up with a weary sigh. The car wash opened early, and so would he. With practiced efficiency, he rinsed out his mug, set it by the sink, and grabbed his denim jacket. He wanted to keep everything normal, whatever normal even meant these days. Helen hadn't stirred from bed by the time Seth was ready to leave. He peered into their bedroom, where she lay curled on her side, hair fanned across the pillow. A pang of concern darted through him. She used to wake up to kiss him goodbye, maybe joke about how he needed to get a better job. It was half playful, half genuine. But more recently, she'd taken to sleeping through his entire morning routine. He stepped inside just long enough to whisper, "Hey, I'm off." Helen shifted under the covers, eyelids fluttering. She mumbled, not bothering to look at him. Seth lingered for a second, hoping for something, some sign of affection or even annoyance. But Helen rolled over, silent. Eventually, he left, swallowing the ache that sat like a rock in his throat. Outside, the chill morning air slapped away his drowsiness. He slid into his worn sedan, started the engine, and began the drive toward the city's outskirts. Sunrise tinted the sky with oranges and pinks, a show of nature's resilience that Seth couldn't fully appreciate. His mind was too cluttered. Traffic was thin, so he made good time. The car wash was nestled off a busy avenue, flanked by a gas station and a fast food chain. Seth pulled in to find Martin, his co-worker, wiping down a sedan from the night shift. Martin raised a hand in greeting. "Morning, buddy," Martin called, giving Seth a quick once-over. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Rough sleep," Seth muttered, forcing a polite smile. "Right," Martin said, eyebrows pinching. But he didn't press further. A good friend, Martin had an unspoken rule. If someone didn't want to talk, he'd let them be. They fell into the usual routine, checking the hoses, prepping cleaning solutions. The roar of the car wash machinery soon filled the air. Seth appreciated the mechanical hum. It left little room for overthinking. Even so, Helen's distant demeanor gnawed at him. Some primal part of him asked, "Is she hiding something?" He shoved the thought aside, focusing on scrubbing the next car. He reminded himself he was a simple man, right? The kind who worked an honest job, came home to a wife he adored. Except that wasn't the full story. Despite appearances, Seth carried a massive secret one Helen didn't even know about. This secret had shaped his life in ways Helen never realized. He was, in fact, a millionaire. He'd invested in tech stocks years ago, back when he was just a nerdy college kid tinkering with computer programs. A few strokes of luck and good timing had exploded into a fortune. Yet the wealth never defined him. He didn't want to walk around flaunting expensive suits or sports cars. All he desired was a life of simplicity, anonymity, which was precisely why he chose to work at this unremarkable car wash. It allowed him to blend in, to be just another guy earning a paycheck. In many ways, he wanted genuine human connections, to be sure people liked him for who he was, not for his bank account. When he'd met Helen, she'd seen him as a humble, kind, and slightly shy man with modest means. That was the man he wished to remain. But secrecy has a way of complicating things. Maybe that secrecy was part of the wedge growing between him and Helen now. As the sun rose higher, more cars arrived. Seth scrubbed and waxed, vacuumed interiors, and joked lightly with Martin. On the outside, it was a normal day. On the inside, though, his mind spun with questions. Around mid-morning, Seth's phone vibrated in his pocket. He wiped his hands on a rag and stepped aside to check it, hoping maybe Helen had texted. Instead, it was an email from his stockbroker, updating him on the latest market surge. He flicked through the numbers. A casual shift had made him a bit richer. He sighed. If only emotional wealth was that easy to gain. He shook his head and slid the phone back, returning to the swirl of soap and water. The mundane tasks offered temporary solace. By midday, Martin hopped over with an energy drink, handing it to Seth. "Thanks," Seth said quietly, cracking it open. "Hey, man," Martin pressed, leaning against the hood of a freshly washed SUV. "No offense, but I can see you're not yourself. Want to talk?" Seth hesitated, swirling the can in his hand. "Helen's been off lately," he finally admitted, voice low. "I can't put my finger on it, but she's distant. Maybe bored with me, I don't know." Martin frowned. "You guys fightin'?" "No big blowouts," Seth replied. "It's more like she's tired of me, I guess. Or something." He paused, glancing at the asphalt. "Honestly, I'm just worried she's drifting away." "Relationships have rough patches," Martin offered. "But if you sense something's up, maybe you talk to her. Communication, right?" "Yeah," Seth said, voice hollow. "I guess so." He wanted to open up fully, mention the possibility of infidelity that gnawed at his gut, but something held him back. He wasn't ready to say it out loud. After their lunch break, Seth found himself in the supply closet rummaging for extra towels. He paused, hearing his phone buzz again. This time, the screen displayed unknown caller. Brow furrowed, he answered. "Hello?" A faint static crackled. A moment later, Helen's voice came through. "Seth?" she asked, sounding uncharacteristically flustered. "Helen? You okay?" "I'm fine," she said, a slight tremor in her tone. Why aren't you answering my texts?" Seth pulled the phone from his ear and checked quickly. Indeed, he had a couple unread messages from Helen. Strange he hadn't heard any notification. "Sorry, guess my phone was on silent," he explained, returning it to his ear. "Well," Helen continued, clearing her throat, "I just wanted to, let me ask you something. Are you coming home on time tonight?" "Of course," he replied. 6:30, same as usual." "Okay," she said, voice clipped. "I might be out with coworkers for a bit. Don't wait up." He felt a small pang. "Oh, some kind of meeting?" "Yeah, a work thing," she said hastily. "I'll see you later." She hung up abruptly, leaving Seth with a mix of confusion and a hint of dread. He couldn't quite place it, but the entire exchange felt forced. Helen's work thing, was that real or something else altogether? By late afternoon, the car wash business started to slow. Seth took the opportunity to slip away, giving Martin a heads-up he'd return soon. The uneasy phone call had set off alarm bells he couldn't silence. He hopped in his sedan, intending just to clear his head with a brief drive. But as he navigated the back streets near Helen's office, he spotted her car parked outside a sleek, modern building he didn't recognize. He knew the building where her company was located, and this definitely wasn't it. His heart pounded like a hammer, but logic told him to keep calm and observe. He pulled over discreetly behind a delivery van, peering through his windshield. Sure enough, within minutes, Helen emerged from the lobby. She wasn't alone. Beside her was Carter, a tall, charming man in business casual attire, a co-worker Seth had vaguely heard about. They were laughing, the kind of laughter that implied a private joke. Carter placed a hand gently on Helen's back, ushering her toward his parked car. Seth's stomach twisted. He forced himself not to jump out or confront them. Instead, he watched. Carter opened the passenger door for Helen, and she slipped inside with a comfortable familiarity. Carter then circled around to the driver's side. Moments later, the car pulled away. Seth stared after them for a long beat, pulse throbbing in his ears. This can't just be a friendly co-worker lunch. Something deep inside him, an instinct he'd never quite needed before, screamed that his marriage was in jeopardy. An hour later, back at the car wash, he tried to act normal. Martin gave him a curious glance, but didn't ask. The rest of the shift passed in slow motion. Seth's mind played loops of that image. Helen and Carter together, the closeness of their body language. Could it still be innocent? He wanted to believe so, but his gut churned otherwise. When evening rolled in, Seth changed out of his damp clothes. Outside, the sky had dimmed to a mellow purple. He texted Helen a simple, "Are you home?" but got no reply. He headed to their house, uncertain of what he might find. The house was dark when he arrived. He stepped inside, flicking on the living room light. No Helen. The quiet felt oppressive. The only sign of her presence was her jacket tossed on the couch. She must have come home at some point. He checked the kitchen, still no wife. Then on the counter, a note read, "Went out with some co-workers. Back late." Seth exhaled heavily, crushed the note in his palm, and let it drop into the trash. His heart ached with 1,000 questions, none of which had comforting answers. He made himself a quick sandwich he barely tasted, then sat in the dim living room trying to gather his thoughts. He replayed the day's events, the gut feeling, the phone call, seeing Helen with Carter. Something had to be done. He couldn't remain in the dark, letting suspicion drive him insane. He rose and paced, mind flipping from scenario to scenario. Confronting Helen Hedden could lead to denials or more secrets. That wouldn't get him anywhere. His best chance was to gather actual proof, figure out the truth beyond any doubt. Only then could he decide how to protect himself, and yes, ironically, protect that hidden fortune if things took a nasty turn. Eventually, exhaustion weighed him down. He sank onto the couch, dozing fitfully to the low hum of the TV. Hours later, near midnight, he heard the door open. He stirred, blinking groggily. Helen tiptoed inside, but froze when she realized he was awake. "Hey," she said, voice guarded. "Didn't know you'd still be up." "I waited," he replied softly, sitting up. "You have a good time?" She shrugged. "Yeah, just drinks." She didn't offer more. "You smell like wine," he remarked. She gave a half nod, half shrug. "Probably." The tension hung thick enough to slice with a knife. Seth considered saying something about Carter, about what he'd seen, but the words got stuck. Instead, he gave her a polite goodnight and retreated to the bedroom, letting her stew in the awkward silence. Chapter 2. Morning arrived with a drizzle tapping on the roof. Seth dragged himself through a quick shower and emerged to find Helen already dressed, rummaging in her closet. She'd chosen a tailored blouse and skirt, more stylish than her usual attire for a dull Monday. "Big day at the office?" he asked, voice tight. She glanced at him, hesitating. "Yeah, some meetings," she said, turning back to the closet as if to avoid eye contact. He studied her posture, tense, edgy. It didn't quell his growing suspicion. After last night's silence, neither of them had touched the subject of her so-called co-worker drinks. While she finished, Seth scrolled absent-mindedly on his phone, or tried to. In reality, his mind churned with ways to approach the potential infidelity problem. How does one discreetly gather evidence? He sighed, wishing it were simpler. Helen breezed out with a forced, "Have a good day," barely glancing at him. He stood there, feeling the space between them stretch wider. A half hour later, he was on the road, heading to the car wash for another shift, but the tension from the morning lingered. He replayed her expression, the flicker in her eyes. She was certainly hiding something. Or at least, that was the conclusion his heart kept pushing. Arriving at work, he forced himself to focus on tasks cleaning the giant rotating brushes, stocking up on soap solutions. The drizzle had turned into a steady downpour, ironically giving them fewer customers. Not many folks wash their cars in heavy rain. That left him with too much idle time. During a lull, he ducked into the small break room. Martin was there, snacking on a protein bar. He eyed Seth. "Everything okay at home, man?" Seth let out a humorless chuckle. "Let's just say I have reasons to think Helen might be seeing someone else." Martin's mouth fell open. "Seriously? You got proof?" "Not exactly, but I saw her with a coworker, Carter. They looked too cozy." Martin frowned. "Damn, Seth, I'm sorry." He paused, as if mustering courage. "What are you gonna do?" Seth leaned his back against the wall, the hum of a soda machine filling the silence. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to sit her down and demand answers. He rubbed his eyes. But I have a feeling she'd deny everything. Then I'd still have no closure, just more suspicion. Maybe you should hire a private eye, Martin suggested quietly, half joking but half serious. The idea sparked a memory Seth knew a guy named Bryce from years ago. Bryce had started a small investigative service, primarily running background checks but occasionally following cheating spouses. It was an option, though part of Seth hated the idea of turning his marriage into a spy operation. But reality was harsh, and he needed clarity. As if on cue, Martin's phone buzzed, and he had to step out. Seth was left alone, the rain outside intensifying. He stared at the break room's dull beige walls. The pain of betrayal churned inside him, made worse by the possibility that he was right. He decided to test the waters by texting Helen. Hey, hope your morning's going okay. Any chance we can grab lunch together? Minutes passed. No response. Another hour trickled by. Still nothing. By the time noon approached, Seth had received zero acknowledgement. He remembered how she used to text him sweet nothings, telling him to stay warm or don't work too hard. Now, radio silence. Eventually, around 1:15 p.m., a single line popped up on his screen. I'm busy, maybe tomorrow. He stared at it for a moment, chewing on the inside of his cheek. Busy with what, exactly? Carter? The mental image of them huddled together in some restaurant booth twisted his gut. By mid-afternoon, the rain had tapered off to a mist, and a few cars trickled in. Seth tried to drown his doubts in physical labor scrubbing tires, vacuuming interiors, polishing windows. But each time he glimpsed a shadow or heard a phone ring, his heart jolted. Finally, he stepped outside, leaning against the back of the building. He took out his phone and stared at Bryce's contact info. He'd saved it years ago. Should he call? Was that too extreme? He inhaled the damp air, letting the smell of wet concrete fill his senses. Then, with trembling fingers, he tapped the screen. The phone rang thrice before a gruff voice answered. Bryce here. Hey, this is Seth. You might not remember me. Seth the tech whiz? Bryce interrupted, a faint trace of amusement in his tone. Haven't heard from you in ages. Still rolling in those stock profits? Seth huffed a small laugh. Sort of. Listen, Bryce, I need help. Investigative help. There was a pause. All right. You want me to find something or someone? My wife, Seth murmured, throat tightening. I think she might be cheating. I need confirmation. Bryce's tone shifted to business-like seriousness. I see. You want discreet surveillance, that kind of thing? Seth cringed at the words, but forced himself forward. Yes, discreet. I need proof, one way or another. They exchanged a few logistical details. Bryce asked for photos of Helen and any info on her routine, her workplace. Then they arranged to meet the next evening for a full briefing. Seth ended the call, a swirl of relief and dread saturating his mind. He was actually going through with it, spying on his own wife. He told himself it was the only way to safeguard his mental well-being. That, and possibly his financial future if Helen intended to leave him for Carter. A naive part of him still prayed this was all a misunderstanding, that Bryce would find nothing. But the heavier side braced for heartbreak. Before leaving work, Seth found Martin by the supply shelves. Hey, Seth said softly. Thanks for the talk earlier. I decided to hire a PI. Martin's eyebrows rose. Damn, that's serious. Seth nodded. I just can't keep ignoring the signs. I need to know. Martin placed a hand on Seth's shoulder. I'm here if you need anything, man. Don't let this eat you alive. Seth managed a tight smile, appreciative of the support. But inside, his emotions felt like a raging storm. Driving home that evening, he passed by the modern building where he'd seen Helen and Carter the day before. He half expected to see her car again, but the parking lot was mostly empty. He continued on, the city lights reflecting in glistening puddles. Once at the house, he walked in to find Helen in the living room, aimlessly flipping through channels on the TV. She glanced up, offered a strained smile. Hey, she said. Hey, he replied, shrugging off his jacket. Long day? She nodded, not elaborating. Seth lingered at the edge of the room. I texted you earlier. Wanted to do lunch. Yeah, sorry, Helen said, eyes still on the flickering screen. We had a last-minute meeting. He bristled slightly. With Carter, right? Her head whipped around. Why do you ask about Carter? He took a slow breath, trying not to blow up. You mention him sometimes. Just curious if you work closely with him. Helen's eyes narrowed. He's on my team, so yeah, it's normal. The air felt charged with tension. Seth debated pushing further, but the words lodged in his throat. Instead, he exhaled and forced a casual nod. Got it. She turned back to the TV, jaw clenched. After a moment, Seth retreated to the kitchen, feeling a sense of inevitability about the conflict they were dancing around. He heated up leftovers for dinner, not bothering to ask if she wanted any. She didn't come in to check, and eventually he ate alone. The sound of the TV melded with the scrape of his fork against the plate. Everything about the evening felt eerily off. When he finished, he approached her again, determined to at least maintain some semblance of a relationship. You want to watch something together or talk? He ventured. Helen glanced over, looking almost guilty. I'm a bit exhausted, she said. Rainy days always drain me. Maybe tomorrow. Sure, he replied, heart sinking. Tomorrow, always tomorrow. She stood, turning off the TV. As she headed for the bedroom, Seth called after her softly, I love you, you know. She paused, back still turned, and mumbled, Yeah, love you too. But the words rang hollow. Chapter 3. The following day brought a fragile sense of anticipation. Seth was scheduled to meet Bryce in the evening at a small diner halfway across town. All day, Seth wrestled with second thoughts. Was he violating Helen's privacy? Would she forgive him if he was wrong? But the gnawing paranoia spurred him onward. After his shift, Seth drove to the diner. The neon sign buzzed overhead, reflecting on wet pavement. Inside, the low hum of conversation filled the cozy booths. Bryce was easy to spot, a tall man with scruffy hair and a calm, penetrating gaze. Seth, Bryce greeted, extending a hand. Long time no see. Seth shook it. Yeah, thanks for doing this. They settled into a corner booth. Bryce ordered black coffee. Seth picked a soda but barely touched it. Bryce got right down to business, pulling out a small notepad. So, your wife Helen, tell me about her schedule, the places she frequents, any key details about Carter. Seth recounted everything. Her office building's location, typical lunch breaks, the new building he'd seen her visit. He also passed over a photo of Helen from a few months ago, beaming in a summery dress. The memory of her radiant smile twisted a knife in his gut. Bryce studied the photo. She's definitely memorable, he said, tucking it into a folder. You said the coworker's name is Carter. Do you have his last name? Carter Donovan, Seth recalled. I think he's a senior analyst or something. Bryce scribbled notes. All right. I can start tailing her discreetly, maybe also check on Carter. If they're meeting outside normal hours, we'll find out. Seth nodded, swallowing thickly. I hate that I'm doing this, but I need the truth. You do, Bryce said matter-of-factly. If she's stepping out on you, better you know now. He paused, looking at Seth with genuine concern. Just be prepared. This kind of investigation sometimes turns up answers you'd rather not see. Seth exhaled shakily. Believe me, I'm mentally bracing. They hashed out the details. Bryce would start the next day, tailing Helen's car after she left for work. If Carter was involved, Bryce would snap photos, gather timestamps. There was a flat fee plus expenses for any special tracking devices. Seth agreed, handing over a thick envelope of cash, a drop in the bucket of his hidden fortune. Finished with the formalities, they made small talk about old times. Bryce teased Seth about the tech stocks that made him wealthy, while Seth offered a half-smile in return. But the lightness soon vanished under the weight of the situation. They exited the diner, the evening sky faintly lit by streetlights. Bryce clapped Seth on the shoulder. Try to get some rest, man. I'll update you once we have something concrete. Seth thanked him and got into his sedan, driving away with the sense that a pivotal chapter in his life had just begun. The next few days could either confirm his worst fears or grant him a reprieve from suspicion. He prayed for the latter but prepared for the former. Back at home, Helen was in the bedroom on her laptop. She barely acknowledged Seth's entrance. He hovered in the doorway, forcing a casual tone. "Hey, I grabbed a burger on the way back. You want anything?" She shook her head, eyes not leaving the screen. "No, I'm good." He tried again. "You all right?" "Fine," she said curtly. Seth clenched his jaw. The wall between them felt unbreakable. He retreated to the living room, flicking through TV channels aimlessly, too restless to settle on anything. Eventually, he heard Helen close her laptop and shuffle out. She paused, leaning in the hallway. "I'm going to bed." He hesitated. "Mind if we talk for a minute?" She exhaled, shoulders drooping. "I'm tired, Seth. Can we do this tomorrow?" His frustration flared. "You always say that, Helen. Tomorrow, tomorrow. We never actually talk." A flicker of guilt crossed her features. Then she set her jaw, turned, and went into the bedroom, shutting the door softly behind her. The next day was the official start of Bryce's surveillance. Seth felt an odd tension, almost like a conspirator. At work, he kept checking his phone, wondering if Bryce would text updates. But the first half of the day passed without word. He managed to half-heartedly wash and detail cars, ignoring Martin's curious glances. Finally, around noon, Seth's phone buzzed. A message from Bryce. "Following her now. She's heading to Carter's building." Seth's stomach flip-flopped. He typed back, "Any sign it's work-related?" A few minutes later, Bryce replied, "Hard to say. They just walked in together. I'll keep you posted." The rest of the day stretched into an agonizing marathon. Each hour, Seth fought the urge to text Bryce for updates, reminding himself that professional PIs rarely appreciate constant checking. Late in the afternoon, Bryce sent another text. They had lunch together at a bistro. She paid, laughing, quite friendly. Seth's chest tightened. Friendly lunches, sure. But was that all? Then came a follow-up. Headed back to her office. I'll watch for after-work meetups. By the time Seth clocked out, he felt drained. He texted Bryce a single question. "Anything else?" A short reply came. "Nothing conclusive. They parted ways. I'll keep at it tomorrow." Seth sighed, grateful it wasn't a smoking gun yet, but also unsettled that Helen seemed comfortable enough to buy Carter lunch. That evening, Seth arrived home to find the house empty again. Helen had left a note. "Went to see a movie with a friend. Be back late." No mention of which friend. No mention of Carter. He rummaged in the fridge, pulling out leftover pizza. As he chewed, he stared at the note. Movie with a friend. He pictured Carter's smug grin, forcibly suppressing the wave of anger. Maybe she really was with a female friend. Or maybe not. Time dragged on. Eventually, near 10, Helen walked in wearing casual clothes. She froze upon seeing him in the living room, as if surprised he was still awake. "Movie good?" Seth asked, feigning calm. She shrugged, dropping her purse on the couch. "It was fine." He nodded, deciding to test her. "Which friend did you go with?" She gave a half-laugh, half-scoff. "Does it matter? I needed some time out." Seth's hands curled into fists under the coffee table. "I'm just curious. You hardly talk to me nowadays." Helen's gaze flickered, annoyance creeping in. "If you must know, I went with Tara." "Funny," he said quietly. "I haven't heard you mention Tara in ages." She crossed her arms. "We reconnected recently, okay? Is that a crime?" He stared at her, wanting to call out the possible lie, but without proof, it was a dead end. He stood, scraping his chair back. "No, it's not a crime," he said, voice cold. "I'm going to bed." Helen didn't respond, only watched him leave, her expression unreadable. Day 2 of Bryce's surveillance brought more unsettling tidbits. He reported that Helen stopped by Carter's office mid-morning, spent about 30 minutes chatting. On top of that, they left work at the same time, though no romantic gestures were witnessed. By the time Seth left the car wash, he was on edge. He pulled into a gas station, hands trembling as he filled up. He'd always considered himself a calm, rational person, but the strain of suspecting his wife was tearing him apart. He sank into the driver's seat, phone in hand. Another text from Bryce. Caught them having coffee, corner cafe, light banter, touched his shoulder once. Hard to say if it's more than friendly. Seth's breath came shallow. A shoulder touch? Seemingly minor, yet a million alarm bells rang in his head. He typed back, "Keep me updated. Thanks." Then he drove home, bracing himself for another forced evening with Helen. That night, Helen was actually home when Seth arrived. She was in the kitchen, preparing spaghetti. The aroma of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air, almost nostalgic for the times they'd cooked together. "Hey," she said softly, not meeting his gaze. "Figured I'd cook." Seth nodded. "Thanks. Smells good." They ate in the dining room, the overhead light casting a warm glow that felt at odds with the tension. Eventually, Helen cleared her throat. "You've been quiet lately." He let out a short laugh. "I might say the same about you." She fiddled with her fork. "Maybe we just need a weekend away? Like a short trip?" Seth blinked, taken aback by her sudden suggestion. "You want to go away together?" A guarded look slipped across her features. "I don't know. I'm just trying to break this weird rut we're in." He hesitated, partly touched by the idea, partly suspicious. Actually, that might be nice. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Let's talk more about it soon, yeah?" They finished dinner with minimal conversation. As Seth washed the dishes, he wondered if she was truly attempting to salvage their marriage, or if it was just a distraction tactic. Chapter 4. On the third day of investigation, Bryce's updates grew more concerning. Early afternoon, Seth received a string of texts. Helen left office at 12:10, got into Carter's car. They drove to a small bar in Midtown, unusual for lunch. Sat in a booth, close conversation. Can't hear them, but took pictures. She briefly touched his hand, laughing often. Seth read them on his break, heart pounding so loud he thought Martin might hear. A bar at lunchtime, hand touching. This was crossing lines that decent co-workers typically don't. Finally, a last text came. Back to office at 1:45. Tightly scheduled, but definitely cozy. By the end of his workday, Seth felt physically sick. He texted Bryce, "Meet me tonight? Need to see what you got." Bryce agreed, suggesting the same diner as before. Seth told Martin he had some errands and left early. He arrived at the diner to find Bryce already in a corner booth, laptop open. "Got some pictures," Bryce said, motioning for Seth to sit. He pulled up a series of still shots. In the first, Helen was stepping out of Carter's car, her expression bright, animated. In the next, they were inside a dimly lit bar, leaning across the table as though sharing secrets. Another showed Helen's hand resting lightly on Carter's forearm. Seth's stomach churned. While not overtly scandalous, the vibe in these photos was undeniably intimate. Bryce cleared his throat. "No direct evidence of, kissing or anything. But the body language is suggestive. They seem pretty comfortable. On day one, it was normal work stuff, but each day they've gotten friendlier." Seth massaged his temple, a headache forming. "Have you overheard any conversation?" "Not much. The bar was loud. But I did catch him saying something about a weekend away," Bryce said, glancing at his notes. Helen laughed and mentioned something like, "We have to be careful." That's about it. "Careful," Seth repeated bitterly. "They know they're treading into something secret," Bryce nodded. "Likely. If you want more conclusive proof, we might need an audio device or find a scenario to catch them in a more private setting." Seth stared at the pictures, eyes burning. "I hate this," he muttered. "But keep going. I need the full truth." Bryce folded up the laptop. "I'll keep tailing her. Meanwhile, you keep an eye on any suspicious behaviors at home." Seth's mood was grim when he returned home. Helen was on the couch, flipping through a magazine. She glanced up, forcing a smile that quickly faltered when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked. He shrugged, feigning fatigue. "Long day. You?" She hesitated. "Same. Just work." He sank beside her, gaze distant. "Helen," he began softly, "you ever wonder if we're drifting apart?" Her fingers tensed on the magazine. "Where's this coming from?" He exhaled. I don't feel like I know you anymore." She turned away slightly. "Seth, you're being dramatic. We're just going through a phase." "A phase that involves secret lunches, maybe?" he said before he could stop himself. Helen's head whipped around. "What are you talking about?" He bit his lip, realization hitting that he'd nearly revealed Bryce's surveillance. "Nothing," he muttered. I saw your receipts. A bar midtown. Didn't think that was your usual lunch spot. Her face paled. Carter invited me. It was a team-building thing. Seth let out a humorless laugh. Team building in a bar? Helen's anger flared. You're prying into my receipts now? This is insane. He stood, frustration boiling over. Is it insane, or is it that you're lying? She shot up, magazine falling to the floor. I can't do this right now. She stormed to the bedroom, slamming the door. In the aftermath of that confrontation, Seth paced the living room, breath ragged. It was the first time he'd outright challenged her. Her defensive reaction only fueled his suspicions. He tapped a quick message to Bryce. We had a fight. She's on edge. Be careful. No reply came. Seth dropped onto the couch, head in his hands. He half wished he could vanish from this reality. The woman he loved had become a stranger. He dozed off eventually. Sometime in the night, Helen must have left the bedroom because he woke at dawn to find an extra blanket draped over him. That small gesture of care felt tragically ironic. The next few days were a blur of tension and secrecy. Bryce's updates continued. He saw Helen and Carter share more lunches, quick coffee breaks, and at one point, an after-work ride in Carter's car. They lingered outside Helen's office building, deep in conversation. Seth felt like a zombie at the car wash, going through motions while his mind fixated on each new piece of evidence. Martin tried to talk to him, but Seth brushed him off with half-truths. At home, Helen offered no confessions, no real intimacy. She was quieter, sometimes skittish if Seth asked about her day. The emotional distance between them grew into a canyon. Finally, one evening, Bryce called with a more urgent tone. Seth, I overheard something big. Helen told Carter she wants to plan a weekend trip, just the two of them, out of town. Seth's blood turned to ice. Are you sure that's what she said? Positive, Bryce replied. She mentioned a colleague's seminar as a cover story. Carter joked about how sneaking around was part of the thrill. Seth gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. So that's it. They're fully planning to cheat out of town. Bryce paused. I'll keep tracking. If they really go, we can follow and get incontrovertible proof. Seth's voice trembled with rage and heartbreak. Good. Let me know the moment you have details. That night, Helen was in an oddly good mood, humming in the kitchen. She even gave him a peck on the cheek when he walked in. The gesture felt so surreal that Seth almost recoiled. What's up? He asked, tone guarded. She offered a bright smile. I'm just thinking maybe we really should do a trip. Somewhere nice. He forced a neutral expression. You've mentioned that before. Did you have a place in mind? Her eyes flickered, still figuring it out. But I'd like us to reconnect, you know. A bitter taste filled his mouth. She's lying to my face, he thought. Her real plan was with Carter. Maybe she intended to feed him a story about some work seminar. Despite the anger, he nodded. Sure, we can talk about that soon. Helen's smile grew and she returned to making dinner. Seth quietly marveled at the extent of her deceit. He wondered if this was how little she respected him, or if guilt was gnawing at her behind that pleasant facade. Over the next couple of days, the tension rose to a near breaking point. Then, on a Friday evening, Helen casually announced, I might have to go out of town next weekend for a work-related conference. It's kind of last minute. Will you be okay here alone? Seth took a moment to calm his racing heart. So it was happening, she was setting the stage. Sure, he said with forced mildness. Where's the conference? She hesitated, eyes flicking away. A coastal resort a few hours south. I'll confirm details Monday. His throat felt dry. All right. Let me know if you need a ride to the airport. Helen blinked, then gave a quick laugh. It's probably just a drive, but thanks. Seth stared at her, memories of their early happy times swirling with the present heartbreak. He managed a small nod, then walked away. That night, he called Bryce. She's making her move. Says it's next weekend. Bryce confirmed he'd tail them. Pack some gear if you want to come along. I can get you a separate room at the resort if that's where they're headed. Seth swallowed, mind churning. Yeah, I'll come. I need to see this for myself. He ended the call with a sense of grim determination. The final act of this ugly affair was about to unfold, and he was preparing for the worst. Chapter 5. Seth woke up on Monday morning feeling like the air was full of electric tension. Every muscle in his body seemed wound tight, as though anticipating a final confrontation. Next weekend, Helen had claimed, she'd be traveling for a work conference. But Seth knew better now, courtesy of Bryce's updates. This was no innocent business trip. It was a lover's getaway with Carter. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring down at his socked feet. Helen wasn't in the bedroom. She'd already left for work, leaving behind a brief, impersonal note on the counter. "Don't forget to pay the electric bill. I might come home late." That line, "I might come home late." It stoked the embers of his anger. He imagined Carter's smug face, that easy grin. Then he pictured Helen lying through her teeth. The final puzzle piece was the trip. Seth sighed, raking a hand through his hair. He reminded himself to keep calm. He had to endure a few more days, gather the ultimate proof. Bryce would follow them, and Seth would be right behind, determined to corner them in a situation they couldn't explain away. Stomach twisting, he left the house and drove to the car wash. With each passing block, he steeled himself, mentally rehearsing how he'd respond when faced with undeniable betrayal. Part of him hoped for a miracle that Helen would suddenly realize the error of her ways, but his rational mind doubted it. Arriving at the car wash, Seth gave Martin a nod. Martin approached, brow furrowed. "You look even more wrecked than usual," Martin observed gently. "That situation with Helen, is it getting worse?" Seth forced a shaky smile. "I can't talk details, but yeah, it's headed for a showdown." Martin exhaled. "Damn, man, I'm sorry. If you need to step away from here or take time, do it. Willow's got your back." Willow, their manager, had been supportive in subtle ways, giving Seth flexible hours. He appreciated that. "Thanks. Might have to vanish for a bit next weekend." Martin's eyes searched Seth's face. "Whatever you do, be careful." Seth nodded. That was the plan, cautious but decisive. He clapped Martin's shoulder and tried to refocus on the day's tasks. Polishing windshields, clearing vacuum hoses, checking soap dispensers. The usual routine at the car wash once felt so comforting. Now it just felt empty. The hum of machines did little to soothe the churning in his chest. By mid-morning, Seth's phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Bryce, confirming they've booked a resort about 3 hours south near the coastline. 2 nights. Seth stared at the text, heart thudding. 2 nights. So Helen was lying about some conference. Instead, she'd be luxuriating in a romantic hideaway with Carter. A swirl of bitterness and heartbreak welled up, but it also helped to see the truth spelled out in black and white. He typed back, "How do you know?" Bryce replied within a minute. "Carter phoned the resort from his office." I recorded the call. He mentioned both names, special request to have a discreet arrangement. Seth clenched his jaw. The blatant secrecy was enraging. He responded, "Got it. We go after them." Bryce's final text, "Yes, I'll secure a room for us to monitor. Keep you posted." So it was official. The betrayal had advanced to a new level. A wave of sadness coursed through him, but under it was an icy resolve. They wouldn't get away with humiliating him. At lunch break, Seth sat in his car, nibbling half-heartedly on a sandwich. He scrolled through old photos on his phone. Him and Helen grinning at a carnival last summer, their arms around each other. Another shot from their wedding day, cutting the cake with messy smiles. He lingered on that image, feeling tears threaten. How did we get here? He wondered. He also recalled how he'd concealed his hidden fortune, wanting Helen to love him for who he was. He'd even told her he had student loan debts that forced him to keep a simple job. She'd teased him about it occasionally, but never pried too deep. Now, it felt like the only advantage he had, that and Bryce's investigative help. When push came to shove, he could do far more than she or Carter expected. He slid the phone away, finishing his meager lunch. The time for self-pity was ending. Soon, action would replace the tormenting questions. After all, even the strongest illusions crumble when confronted by reality. Work dragged on. By late afternoon, a frustrated customer stormed in, complaining about water spots on his car's windows. Seth apologized, reran the wash for free. Usually, he prided himself on top-notch service. Today, he was too preoccupied to manage every detail. Once the customer left, Martin gave Seth a concerned glance. "You sure you're good to finish out the day?" Martin asked quietly. Seth attempted a reassuring nod. Yeah, I'm good. Just a slip-up. Martin eyed him for a beat, then let it drop. Seth used the final hour to methodically recheck each cleaning station, ensuring no more mistakes. As he worked, he wondered if Helen was at that very moment giggling with Carter. The mental image made him scowl in anger. At closing time, Willow strolled by. Hey, Seth, you know we're behind you if you need time. Heard from Martin you might vanish next weekend. He mustered a grin. Thanks, Willow. I'll handle it. Just a personal matter. She patted his back lightly. No problem. We all got personal stuff sometimes. Driving home, he found the roads congested. A sense of claustrophobia tightened his chest. He flicked on the radio, only to catch a love song that made him grimace. Switching channels, he settled on news chatter, tuning out the specifics, just letting the noise drown out swirling thoughts. Eventually, he pulled up at the house. Helen's car was there, surprising him. She was rarely home so early. He steeled himself, stepping inside. In the living room, Helen was on the couch, rummaging through her laptop bag. She glanced up, offering a guarded smile. Hey, she said softly, you're home. He raised an eyebrow. You waiting for me or something? She shrugged. I was thinking maybe we could talk. Seth's heartbeat kicked up. Okay, sure. He set his keys down and sat in the armchair across from her, posture stiff. What's on your mind? Helen hesitated, chewing her lip. Look, I know we've been off. I'm not sure how we got so distant, but I hate it. He nodded slowly, not trusting himself to speak yet. She pressed on. I've been stressed. Work is insane, and then we keep having these weird vibes between us. I was hoping we could, I don't know, reset? Seth's jaw tightened. A reset would require honesty, Helen. If you have something to tell me, now's the time. Because if we go on pretending, it'll only get worse. She lowered her gaze. You're always suspicious these days. I feel like I can't breathe without you questioning it. His hands curled into fists on his lap. Maybe if your behaviors weren't so secretive, I wouldn't question them. Let's be real for a second. This work trip you mentioned, is it truly for business? Helen's eyes darted up, a flicker of panic. Yes, I told you it's a short conference near the coast. If you don't believe me, you can... She paused, biting her tongue. Look, the details are in my email. I can show you if you want, but it's official. He forced a short laugh. So it's official. Right. The dryness in his tone must have come across because Helen's jaw tensed. She swallowed. Seth, can't you trust me at least once? I'm your wife. A wave of bitterness swept over him. He inhaled slowly, trying not to explode. I'm trying, he lied. But something's not adding up. We'll see after your trip, I guess. Helen's cheeks reddened with anger. You know what? I'm done talking about this. I tried to mend bridges, but you're pushing me away. Without waiting for a response, she stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Seth remained in the living room, heart pounding. The conversation had devolved into hostility. So be it, he thought. Her conference was no real conference at all. He'd get the truth soon enough. Night settled over the house in oppressive silence. Seth eventually wandered to the couch, too tense to join Helen in the bedroom. He scrolled aimlessly through social media, seeing photos of old friends and acquaintances. Some were married, some single, some with kids. He never imagined his own marriage might crumble so spectacularly. At one point, around 11, the bedroom door cracked open. Helen peeked out, eyes puffy from tears. She stared at him as though tempted to speak, then turned away, shutting the door gently. That was the last he saw of her that night. Seth leaned his head back on the couch, exhaustion sweeping in. This charade was nearly over. If Helen truly wanted to betray him, she'd do it out in the open next weekend, and Bryce would be there, camera in hand. The final puzzle piece would lock into place, and Seth would be ready to act. He dozed fitfully, haunted by the memory of her face, half illumined by the hallway light, etched with regret or maybe guilt. If she only realized what she was throwing away. Chapter 6. The next few days passed in a haze of silent breakfasts and polite, forced small talk. Helen avoided direct confrontation, apparently hoping her facade would hold until the weekend. Seth maintained a neutral facade, too, though inside he was boiling. Each day, Bryce sent him cryptic updates. She's texting Carter frequently, or they booked a spa service for Saturday. By Thursday, the tension reached a crescendo. Seth and Helen barely spoke at all, existing like strangers under the same roof. She spent her evenings meticulously packing a small suitcase, occasionally glancing at him as if expecting an outburst. But he said nothing, just watched. On Friday morning, Helen announced she'd be leaving right after work for the conference. She had an early check-in, she claimed. Seth forced a civil tone, wishing her a safe drive. She gave him a tight smile and hauled her suitcase out the door, a final piece of normality overshadowing the deeper betrayal. As soon as Helen's car disappeared from the driveway, Seth grabbed his own pre-packed duffel. Inside it, he'd stashed some clothes, a laptop, a small digital camera, and a few personal essentials. Bryce had texted him that morning. "Meet me at the gas station on Route 17 at 5 p.m. We'll follow them together." Seth forced down a quick breakfast, then left the house, mind spinning with conflicting emotions, anger, dread, and an odd sense of relief that the waiting was over. He drove to the car wash first, letting Willow and Martin know he had an emergency trip that weekend. They offered him concerned good lucks, to which he murmured vague thanks. By 4 p.m., he was on the highway, heading south, following Bryce's instructions. The sky was overcast, threatening rain. It matched Seth's mood perfectly. He reached the designated gas station a little before 5. Bryce was there, leaning against his own car, a nondescript silver sedan. Seth parked and walked over, heart hammering in his chest. Bryce nodded in greeting. "Helen and Carter left about an hour ago, traveling separately in Carter's car. She left hers at work. They're definitely heading to the resort. I tailed them onto the interstate, but gave them a head start to meet you." Seth exhaled. "So they're traveling together, just the two of them?" "Yeah." Bryce's expression softened. "You sure you're ready for this? The moment you see them, it's going to sting." Seth's jaw clenched. "It's better than living in doubt." Bryce handed him a small earpiece. "We'll communicate while we drive. I'm going to keep a safe distance. You follow me. Once we're at the resort, I've arranged a room across the hall from theirs under a different name. We'll set up hidden cameras if possible." Seth nodded, a swirl of emotions churning. "Lead the way." They hit the road, merging onto the interstate that snaked southward toward the coast. Traffic was moderate, the sky darkening with potential rain. Bryce's voice crackled through the earpiece, giving occasional updates. "No sign of them yet, but Carter's car is a black SUV with tinted windows. Might be further ahead." Seth kept his eyes on the road, though his mind reeled with mental images of Helen leaning against Carter's shoulder. Bryce had already told him they'd reserved a single king-size suite, ironically paying with Carter's credit card. They're not even trying to hide it from the staff, Seth thought bitterly. Or maybe they'd requested discretion from the resort employees. Time rolled on, mile markers zipping past. At some point, the sky unleashed a light drizzle, adding to the gloom. Around 7 p.m., Bryce announced, "I've spotted Carter's SUV at a rest stop. Don't pull in. We'll keep going another exit and wait." Seth's fists tightened on the steering wheel. They were probably stretching their legs or grabbing coffee or exchanging flirty banter. He obeyed Bryce's instruction, continuing down the highway. Soon, Bryce guided him into a small roadside diner parking lot where they'd watch if Carter's SUV passed. They didn't wait long. Within 20 minutes, Bryce's phone beeped. He mumbled into the earpiece, "Just got a text from my secondary contact. Carter's on the move. Let's go." They merged back onto the interstate. The drizzle intensified, headlights illuminating sheets of rain. Up ahead, Bryce kept a careful distance behind Carter's vehicle. Seth followed suit, his pulse racing each time brake lights flashed in the gloom. After another hour of tense driving, the SUV took an exit ramp. Bryce followed. The resort was only 15 minutes from this point, hugging the shoreline. Now the rainfall hissed against the pavement, turning the world into slick reflections of red brake lights. Eventually, Carter's SUV turned off onto a narrower coastal road. Seth and Bryce stayed several cars back, heart pounding, until the SUV vanished around a bend. Bryce slowed, letting them create a gap. Then they too navigated that bend, spotting a well-lit sign for Coral Breeze Resort up ahead. Seth recognized the name from Bryce's earlier intel. This was it, a posh oceanfront hideaway with swirling neon palm trees and a grand lobby. Carter's SUV rolled into the entrance lane, a valet approaching with an umbrella. Bryce pulled over to the side of the road, dimming the headlights. Seth parked behind him, watchful. They saw Carter and Helen step out under the valet's umbrella. In the gloom, Seth could just make out Helen's silhouette, wearing a stylish raincoat. She laughed at something Carter said. Carter slipped a quick hand around her waist before they walked inside. The sight stabbed Seth like a knife. Through the earpiece, Bryce murmured, "That's them. Let's wait a few minutes before we go in. Don't want them to see us." Seth swallowed hard, trying to keep from trembling with rage. "Okay." He gripped the steering wheel, breath coming in shudders. Even though he'd expected this, actually seeing it was a gut punch. They waited. Rain pattered on the windshield. Seth's mind churned with swirling thoughts. How did we get here? Why didn't I see it sooner? The minutes dragged, each one a reminder that Helen and Carter were checking into a room together, presumably for the night. Finally, Bryce signaled, "Let's go." They drove up to the entrance, valets approaching with umbrellas. Bryce used a calm, practiced voice, telling the staff they had reservations. Seth, carrying his duffel, tried to keep his expression neutral. Inside the ornate lobby, palm frond decor and gently lit chandeliers exuded tropical luxury. The air smelled of citrus and coconut. Seth's stomach churned at the thought of Helen indulging in a romantic getaway here. Bryce kept a polite distance from Seth as they approached the front desk. The clerk welcomed them with a professional smile, referencing the name Brian Jacobs for Bryce's reservation. That was the alias he'd arranged in advance. Seth got a separate key under Michael Lewis. Each of them had a single room, though in reality, they planned to coordinate from one main suite. Bryce had done the legwork to request a floor near Carter's. The clerk cheerfully informed them they'd been upgraded to the same level as a few other guests. She didn't mention Carter or Helen, but Seth's heart hammered anyway. They rode the elevator in silence. The door slid open on the 8th floor, revealing a plush hallway with coral pink carpeting and seascape artwork. Bryce led Seth to the suite he'd arranged, 805. Right next door, 806 apparently was unoccupied. Carter's suite was 810, a few doors down. Perfect vantage for discreet observation. Inside 805, Bryce flicked on the lights. The space was comfortable 2 queen beds, a small kitchenette, a balcony presumably overlooking the ocean. Seth hardly noticed the view. He tossed his bag on the bed, restlessness thrumming through his veins. Bryce locked the door behind them, speaking quietly. "I'll set up a tiny camera in the hallway, probably around the corner near the ice machine. If we're lucky, we'll catch them coming and going." Seth raked a hand through his hair. "And if we can get a mic near their door?" "Risky, but possible. Let me do a quick recon." Bryce patted Seth's shoulder. "You just breathe, man. I know this is tough." Seth sank onto the bed, exhaling shakily. "Go ahead." Bryce grabbed a small duffel with surveillance gear and slipped out. Seth listened to the hush of the hotel's ventilation, the soft patter of rain on the balcony door. His mind whirled with images of Helen in Carter's arms. She's in 810 right now, probably sipping champagne or something. The jealousy and betrayal coiled in his gut like a snake. He stared at the phone. He could text her, ask how her conference was going. She'd likely lie back, some made-up story about, "Just got here, going to bed early." The duplicity galled him. Instead, he just tapped out a message to Martin. "I'm okay, away for the weekend. We'll fill you in soon." Martin replied with a thumbs-up emoji, no further words. A small wave of gratitude washed over him, at least Martin cared. Time crawled. After about 15 minutes, Bryce returned, quietly shutting the door behind him. He set down his bag. "We're good. I placed a discreet camera in a potted plant near the elevator bank, capturing the approach to 810. I also managed to slip a small mic near the base of their door. If they speak loudly, we might catch something." Seth nodded, impressed. "Thanks." Bryce sat at the small table, firing up a laptop. "Let's see if we can pick up any audio feed." A moment later, a faint static crackled from the laptop speakers. They heard distant, muffled voices but couldn't make out specifics. For the next hour, they watched the feed. Twice, they saw the elevator doors open, letting out various guests, but not Carter or Helen. The microphone in the hallway captured sporadic chatter from passers-by, housekeeping staff, a couple laughing, but no sign of their targets leaving the room. Seth's tension escalated with each passing second. He imagined Helen and Carter behind that door, maybe freshening up, or worse. He forced himself not to dwell on the mental image of them in bed. The thought made him want to punch a wall. Bryce typed notes on his laptop. Sometimes they might just stay in. If we pick up even a snippet of conversation, it'll confirm everything. Seth's voice was grim. It's already confirmed. This is just the final proof. Bryce nodded, sympathy etched on his face. You want to confront them tonight? Or wait till morning, maybe catch them heading to breakfast? Seth hesitated. Let's see if they leave the room for dinner. I can't barge in without a plan. I want them to have no room to deny anything. Sure enough, around 8:30 p.m., the feed showed the hallway lights flick on. Carter's door, 810, swung open. Carter stepped out first, scanning the corridor. Then Helen emerged, wearing a classy, short black dress, hair styled. Seth's stomach plummeted. She looked radiant, though guilt overshadowed that thought. He leaned close to the laptop, hearing faint footsteps, then Carter saying, "Restaurant's on the ground floor, right?" Helen murmured an affirmative. They walked out of frame, presumably heading to the elevator. The door slid shut behind them. Seth inhaled. They're going for dinner. Bryce closed the laptop. We can follow at a distance, get some photos, or we can wait up here. Your call. Seth's eyes blazed. I want to see them. Need to know if they're openly affectionate in public. All right, Bryce said calmly. Let's move. They left their room, slipping into the elevator. On the ride down, Seth forced himself to keep a blank expression. They reached the lobby's restaurant, a softly lit bistro area with candle-lit tables. Bryce gestured for them to stand near a decorative partition, half hidden from view. They scanned the tables until, near the corner, they spotted Carter and Helen. Seth's heart hammered, seeing them at a small table by the window. Candlelight danced across Helen's features. She was smiling softly at Carter, who had one hand resting near hers. They looked for all the world like a couple in love. Seth felt a surge of fury. That's my wife, you bastard. But he bit the inside of his cheek, controlling the urge to confront them right there. Bryce discreetly raised a phone, snapping a few photos. In them, Carter's posture angled intimately toward Helen, who sipped a glass of wine. Then Carter reached out, gently brushing a stray hair from Helen's cheek. She laughed softly. Seth clenched his fists so hard his nails dug into his palms. That was more than enough evidence of emotional intimacy. Still, he stood rooted, uncertain whether to blow it all up now. Bryce leaned in, whispering, "Easy, man. Don't lose it in public." Seth nodded, swallowing. "Let's get out of here. I can't watch this any longer." They retreated to the lobby, then took the elevator back up. Seth paced the hotel room, consumed by roiling anger and heartbreak. Bryce suggested they just gather more evidence. Seth nodded numbly, feeling like a man on the brink. Around 9:45 p.m., the hallway camera feed showed Carter and Helen returning. She was giggling about something. Carter leaned in, pressing a quick kiss to her temple caught on camera. Seth's insides twisted. They disappeared into 810, the door shutting with a soft click. Seth stared at the footage, stomach in knots. Bryce let out a low whistle. That's it. Unambiguous now. Even if they didn't go further physically, that's enough to prove an affair in most people's eyes. Seth slumped into the chair. I can't pretend anymore. Tomorrow morning, I'm confronting them. I want them to know I saw it all. Bryce nodded. I'll back you up, but be mindful. Carter might get aggressive or try to talk his way out. And Helen, she'll probably be shocked or furious. Seth rubbed his temples. Let her be furious. She caused this. Bryce typed a quick note on his laptop. Okay, we'll wait until morning. They'll probably have breakfast around 8 or 9. We can intercept them in the lobby or catch them in the hallway. A cold determination filled Seth. Fine. Let's do it in the hallway. More private. I want them to realize they can't squirm away from me. Sleep was elusive. Seth lay in one of the queen beds, staring at the dark ceiling. Bryce dozed in the other bed, occasionally stirring. Rain tapped the balcony glass, a somber lullaby. Helen is just a few doors down with Carter. The thought burned into Seth's mind all night. At around 4 a.m., he drifted into a fitful sleep, only to be haunted by half-coherent dreams of Helen and Carter mocking him. He snapped awake near sunrise, heart pounding. He sat up, saw Bryce stirring. The clock read 6:37 a.m. Bryce blinked blearily. Morning. Then he remembered their mission. You okay? Seth rubbed his face. No, but let's end this. Chapter 7. By 7:30 a.m., the sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the coastal horizon. Seth and Bryce sipped a quick coffee in their room, tension palpable. They checked the hallway feed, no movement from 810 yet. The plan was set. Once Carter and Helen emerged, they'd confront them. At 8:10, the camera feed caught the door to 810 opening. Helen slipped out first, wearing a casual sundress, her hair neatly brushed. She glanced down the hall, possibly checking if the coast was clear. Then Carter followed, adjusting his shirt collar. They headed toward the elevator. Bryce snapped his laptop shut, nodding at Seth. This is it. Let's go. They slipped into the hallway just after Carter and Helen passed. The pair was waiting for the elevator. Seth's heart thumped a war drum in his chest. He walked up behind them, breath trembling. Helen heard the footsteps, turned slightly, and froze. Her eyes widened, color draining from her face. Carter half-turned, confusion etched on his features. Then realization dawned as he recognized Seth, and next to him, Bryce. Helen's voice emerged in a shaky whisper. Seth, what are you doing here? Carter's posture tensed. Hey man, this isn't... Seth cut him off, fury and heartbreak fueling his tone. Shut up. I know exactly what this is. Helen's lips parted, panicked. It's not what you think. Oh, it's exactly what I think, Seth snapped, stepping closer. Your so-called work conference is a dirty weekend with your boyfriend. Carter lifted his hands placatingly. Look, let's not cause a scene. Maybe we should go somewhere private to talk. Bryce quietly hovered, phone in hand, capturing everything in case Carter tried to deny the confrontation. Helen's eyes darted around, noticing other guests further down the corridor. She hissed, Seth, can we not do this out here? This is humiliating. Humiliating? Seth let out a bitter laugh. Yes, I imagine it is. That's what happens when you cheat on your husband with a coworker. Helen flinched, cheeks flushing. Seth, I swear it's complicated. We were Carter interjected. We're consenting adults, man. I'm sorry if it's a shock, but... Shock? Seth's anger flared. Don't talk to me like it's a minor inconvenience. You've been sneaking around behind my back for weeks, maybe months. Helen attempted to grab Seth's arm. It just happened, okay? I didn't plan this. She faltered, tears pricking her eyes. Seth jerked away from her touch. Don't. You lost the right to lay a hand on me the moment you decided to step out of our marriage. Bryce discreetly gestured for them to move away from the elevator. They stepped to a corner of the hallway, where only a potted palm offered partial cover from passing guests. Carter's gaze flickered, scanning for an escape or a calmer spot. He finally spoke, voice low. We never wanted it to be like this, Seth. Seth's lips curled into a sneer. Then how did you want it? A sweet, clandestine fling that you thought I'd never discover? Carter exhaled. Look, it just happened. We connected at work. Helen felt neglected. She needed you? Seth's eyes were ice cold. Don't you dare shift blame onto me for neglecting her. She had a choice, to be honest, to talk. Instead, she jumped into your bed. Helen sobbed. Seth, please, we can talk about this. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. A heavy hush fell. Seth stared at her tear-streaked cheeks, remembering the woman he once adored. Now all he felt was betrayal. You did hurt me. Over and over with your lies. Did you think you'd get away with it forever? Helen shook her head, tears spilling. We weren't working. I felt unloved, invisible. Carter was supportive. Seth's voice trembled with bitterness. So supportive he brought you here to a fancy resort behind my back. Carter bristled. Don't talk about her like... Seth rounded on him, fists clenched. You stay out of this. You're the one who seduced my wife. Don't you have a wife yourself? Carter's face paled. I'm separated, if you must know. My situation is different. How convenient, Seth spat. Now you're messing up my marriage, too. You think I'll just let it slide? Helen reached out again. Seth, let's calm down. We can figure out how to handle this. We can... He stepped back, face contorting with anguish. There's nothing to figure out. You two can continue your fling, but not while I'm your husband. Bryce cleared his throat softly. Folks, maybe we should relocate. This is still a public space. Helen nodded rapidly, tears on her cheeks. Yes, let's go to our room. We can talk privately. Seth let out a humorless laugh. Your room? Where you two have been sleeping together all night? You expect me to step inside that pit of lies? Carter looked at Bryce with a mix of frustration and nervousness. We just want to avoid a scene. People can hear. Seth's eyes flicked down the hallway, noticing a curious couple stepping off the elevator. The last thing he wanted was onlookers. Fine, let's go. But don't expect me to sit calmly and let you spin lies. Helen bowed her head, turned, and led the way back toward 810. Carter hovered behind her. Bryce and Seth followed, tension radiating like a storm cloud. Once inside, Carter closed the door, flicking on the lights. The suite was immaculate, expensive, with a king bed that looked painfully large to Seth's eyes. They formed a tense circle near the sofa. Helen wrung her hands, voice trembling. Seth, I'm so sorry. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I never wanted to destroy us. He glared at her. Yet you still found time to come here with him. Carter inhaled, stepping forward. Let me speak. Helen told me how distant you'd become, how she felt alone in that marriage. I listened. One thing led to another. It wasn't planned, but we're not going to pretend it's an accident either. Seth's jaw locked. That's the best you can do? One thing led to another? That's your justification? Helen's sobs intensified. Stop it, Carter. Don't be so blunt. Carter shrugged. He deserves honesty. Bryce, standing near the door, recorded discreetly on his phone. Seth folded his arms. Honesty, right. Then be honest about how long you've been sleeping together. Helen glanced away. Carter answered, 6 weeks, maybe a bit more. Seth's breath caught. 6 weeks of betrayal. He glowered at Helen, who wouldn't meet his eyes. Were you ever going to come clean? Or just keep me in the dark forever? Helen spoke through tears. I wasn't sure. I felt guilty. But it's not like you and I were happy, Seth. You barely even noticed me lately. You only talked about the car wash or your daily routine. I felt stifled. Seth's lips curled. So your solution was an affair? Not counseling? Not a serious conversation? You jump into Carter's bed instead? She crumpled onto the sofa, sobbing into her hands. Carter moved as if to comfort her, but froze under Seth's glare. This is insane, Carter muttered. We can't keep screaming at each other. Seth let out a long breath. You think I came here to chat about feelings? No, I came to see the truth, and I've seen enough. Helen looked up, tear-streaked face. Seth, He cut her off. Don't. We're done. You hear me? I'm done being your fool. A charged silence followed. Bryce cleared his throat again, stepping forward. Helen, Carter. Seth wanted proof. We have photos, recordings, everything. This is more than enough to prove adultery if it comes to that legally. Just so you know. Carter paled, gaze snapping to the phone in Bryce's hand. You recorded us? Are you insane? Bryce gave a tight smile. I'm a private investigator. You two made it easy. Helen's eyes darted wildly. Seth, no, you didn't please. You can't show anyone these. I'll lose my job. People at the office, my reputation. He stared at her, a swirl of resentment and heartbreak. And you think my pain matters less than your reputation? She let out a choked sob. That's not what I meant. God, what did we do? Seth swallowed, voice hoarse. You did exactly what you wanted. Now live with the consequences. Carter took a step forward, posture defensive. We're both adults, Seth. She told me your marriage was practically over. Don't ruin her life over something that was inevitable. Seth's nostrils flared. Inevitable? Or convenient for you? Did you push her into thinking I was worthless? Carter's jaw tightened. She came to me, man. She was lonely. Helen cried, Stop it, both of you. I'm the one at fault, too. I made my choice. I just didn't want it to end up like this. Seth exhaled a trembling breath, turning his gaze to Helen. You want the truth? This is the end of our marriage. I want a divorce. Her lips trembled. No, Seth, don't say that. We can work through this. Work through an affair? While you're literally on a romantic trip with him? Ridiculous. She rose, stepping closer, tears sliding down her cheeks. I can end it with Carter. I can come home. We can talk it out. I swear. Seth's bitterness flared. You've spent the past weeks lying. Why would I believe anything now? The tension was suffocating. Bryce glanced at Carter, who looked both uneasy and angry. Helen's frantic sobs filled the suite. Finally, Carter barked, If he doesn't want you, Helen, come with me. We'll figure out our own situation. He can't force you to stay in a dead marriage. Seth's eyes blazed. Don't speak for her, asshole. She's free to do whatever. I'm done either way. Helen trembled, looking between them. I can't just give up on us, Seth. I know I messed up, but he cut her off, voice sharp. You didn't just mess up. You systematically betrayed me. That's a choice, not a mistake. We're finished. He turned to Bryce. I think we've seen enough. Bryce nodded. We have all we need. Helen stared at Bryce with pleading eyes. Please don't show those recordings to anyone else. I can't lose my job. Seth pressed his lips tight, then spat. It's not about revenge porn or blackmail. We just needed the truth. But if you try to deny it in a divorce, I'll use every shred of evidence. Carter's face hardened. That's low. Seth glared at him. You want to talk about low? Look around, buddy. You're in a hotel suite with another man's wife. Helen sank onto the bed, face buried in her hands. I'm sorry, Seth, she moaned between sobs. I never should have come here. I ruined everything. Seth's throat tightened with tears he refused to shed. Yes, you did, he whispered, turning on his heel. With that, he strode out, Bryce in tow. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving Helen's sobs echoing in the hall. Seth walked swiftly, not trusting himself to remain calm any longer. By the time they reached the elevator, his hands shook violently. Inside the elevator, Bryce placed a reassuring hand on Seth's shoulder. You did what you had to. Seth nodded, tears burning his eyes. Feels like I just watched my life burn down. Bryce's expression was compassionate. She lit the match, not you. They exited into the lobby. Hotel guests bustled about, oblivious to the emotional meltdown happening upstairs. Seth inhaled, found his car keys in his pocket. I need to get out of here. Bryce offered, We can talk in your room, or... No, Seth barked, then softened. Sorry, I want to leave. Let's check out. Bryce nodded. All right. Let's finalize the bill, then we'll go. We have more than enough evidence. They approached the front desk where the clerk eyed them politely. Bryce managed small talk while settling the tab, returning the keys. Seth lingered, drifting to the window. Outside, the rain had calmed, revealing a glimpse of the ocean. He felt empty, as though his soul had been ripped away. Moments later, Bryce joined him, gently guiding him out. They walked to their cars, the morning breeze smelling faintly of salt. Seth paused, turning to Bryce. What do I do now? Bryce shrugged sympathetically. Head home, take some time. I'll forward you all the evidence we gathered. Then you can contact a lawyer. Seth gave a hollow nod. Yeah, that's next, I guess. They exchanged a brief, tight embrace and unexpected gesture, but Seth appreciated the support. Bryce then walked to his sedan, calling out, Call me if you need anything. I'll drive back safely. Seth climbed into his own car. He sat behind the wheel, breathing raggedly. Divorce. The word echoed in his mind. This was reality. He fired up the engine and eased out of the resort, leaving behind the place that had sealed the fate of his marriage. Chapter 8. The drive north felt surreal, as though Seth was trapped in a bubble of numbness. The rain had mostly cleared, leaving a pale sun over damp roads. Traffic was lighter than expected, giving him too much mental space to replay the confrontation. Helen's tears, Carter's smug attempts at justification, Bryce's quiet presence, all looped endlessly in his mind. He thought about calling Martin for moral support, but his emotions were too raw. Instead, he turned on the radio, flipping through stations until he landed on a talk show discussing random news. It was a welcome distraction. For a few miles, he let the chatter of distant strangers fill his car, overshadowing the heartbreak swirling inside him. Eventually, he pulled off at a rest stop for a moment, needing to steady his nerves. He parked and rested his head on the steering wheel, letting out a long, trembling exhale. He still couldn't fully process that his marriage was over. Part of him had clung to the hope that Helen might break down and beg forgiveness, that they might salvage something. But after seeing her with Carter, the illusions died. His phone chimed, snapping him out of despair. He glanced at the screen. A text from an unknown number. He opened it, heart jolting as he recognized Helen's writing style. "Seth, please answer. I'm a mess. We need to talk." He let out a hollow laugh. Talk? What's left to say? He closed the message without replying, then turned off the phone altogether. He wasn't ready to hear her tearful pleas or excuses. Not now. Starting the engine again, he got back onto the highway, forging ahead with a single-minded focus on returning home. The miles blurred, and soon he saw the familiar skyline near his city. The vantage points reminded him of how normal life had seemed just a week ago. Now everything was different. He reached his modest suburban neighborhood early afternoon. Clouds drifted overhead, casting shifting shadows on the lawns. Parking in his driveway, he sat for a moment, scanning the empty street. Helen's car wasn't there, of course. She'd driven with Carter. Or maybe she'd eventually drive home alone after that meltdown. Either way, the house felt lonely. Stepping inside, he noticed the stillness. No TV murmuring, no faint hum of Helen's presence. The air had that stale hush of a place unoccupied for a couple days. He set down his duffel, took off his shoes, and wandered through the living room, letting memories bombard him. The couch where he'd dozed while waiting for her countless nights. The kitchen where they'd shared sporadic dinners. Now it all felt like remnants of another life. He found himself drawn to the bedroom. Pushing the door open, he saw the bed they once shared, pillows still disheveled from the last time she'd slept here. A wave of anger surged. He rummaged for a spare box in the closet, mind whirling with the decision to pack up her things. But a smaller voice said, "Maybe wait. Let her come and see the emptiness. Or let a lawyer handle it." He dropped the box with a frustrated grunt, sinking onto the bed. The heartbreak felt suffocating. He hated that he still cared. Despite her betrayal, a part of him yearned for the old days, for the woman he thought she was. A harsh beep from his phone, now turned on again, indicated multiple missed calls. He checked. Indeed, several from Helen, plus some texts from Martin, Bryce, and even Willow. He read Bryce's first. "Hey, you home safe? Let me know." He typed a quick reply. "Yes, just got in." Martin had texted, "You okay? Heard you took a trip. Everything all right?" Seth sent a simple, "No, but I'll survive. Fill you in soon." He ignored Helen's missed calls. He wasn't ready for that confrontation. He wasn't sure he'd ever be. Feeling drained, he changed into comfortable clothes, then wandered into the living room. Opening the liquor cabinet, he found a half-finished bottle of whiskey. Typically, he wasn't a heavy drinker, but right now, the idea of a numbing shot or two was tempting. He poured himself a modest glass, sipped it, grimacing at the burn. The warmth spread through his chest, dulling the edges of his anguish. He sank onto the couch, swirling the amber liquid in the glass. He reminded himself of the bigger picture. Not only was he losing a wife, but there was also the matter of his hidden wealth. If Helen tried to get a big divorce settlement, he needed to be prepared. He pulled out his phone, searching through contacts for an attorney he once consulted about estate planning. Time to do this right, he thought. That evening, after a couple of whiskey-laced hours, Seth dozed off on the couch. He woke to the sound of a car pulling into the driveway around 8 p.m. Heart pounding, he peered through the window blinds. Helen's car was there, headlights illuminating the front porch. She'd come back. He hurriedly sat up, forcing clarity. Did he want to fight? She was probably anxious, desperate to salvage something. But we're done, he reminded himself. A key rattled in the door. Helen stepped inside, eyes swollen from crying. The moment she saw him, she froze. He stood, arms folded. They locked gazes in silence. Helen looked exhausted, wearing the same clothes from the resort, hair disheveled. She shut the door gently, tears welling. Finally she spoke, voice a trembling whisper. "Seth, can we talk?" He exhaled. I think you said enough at the resort. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I had to come. I had to see if you were okay. I know it sounds stupid after everything. Seth's anger flared. You want to check on me? You wanted to see if I survived your betrayal? She flinched. Don't say it like that. How should I say it, Helen? He snapped. You were sleeping with Carter. We caught you. My marriage is destroyed. That about sums it up. Helen sobbed, stepping closer. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I can't fix it easily, but let me try to explain. He cut her off with a raised hand. Explain what? How you snuck around for weeks? How you lied about a conference? She bit her lip, tears spilling. I was lost, Seth. We were so distant, and Carter felt exciting. I never planned it to go this far. He stared at her, chest heaving. Well, it did go that far. Now we're at the end. Helen sank onto a nearby chair, covering her face. Don't say that. We can do counseling or therapy, anything. I'll quit my job if you want. I'll cut off Carter completely. Seth let out a bitter laugh. Now you're desperate? After you spent the weekend in his arms? She nodded frantically. Because I realize how much I stand to lose. I was stupid and selfish. I regret it so much, Seth. His voice trembled with a swirl of heartbreak and fury. You regret getting caught. That's what you regret. Helen sobbed. That's not true. I felt guilty for weeks. I just didn't know how to stop. He rubbed his face, a surge of exhaustion overwhelming him. Regardless of your guilt, it's too late. You made a choice. I can't see a way back. Helen crawled off the chair, kneeling on the floor in front of him, tears dripping. Please, Seth, give me a chance to prove I still love you. I do, I swear. He stared down at her, mind flashing with memory after memory, her sweet laughter, their wedding vows, the life they built. Then he recalled Carter's hand on her waist, the candlelit dinner, the kiss in the hallway. The agony was too great. He shook his head slowly. You love me. Where was that love when you hopped into bed with him? She sobbed harder, voice cracking. I was confused. I was lonely. Please, I'm begging you. He shut his eyes, feeling tears slip down his own cheeks. You killed the trust, Helen. Without trust, there's nothing left. I can't do it. I won't live with the image of you and him in my head every time I see you. She clutched at his leg. I'll earn your trust back, no matter how long it takes. I can't lose you. He gently pried her hands away, stepping back. You already lost me. Helen collapsed into ragged sobs on the floor. Seth turned away, tears sliding down his face as well. Part of him wanted to comfort her, but he knew that was the old, naive love. The betrayal overshadowed everything. After a long moment, her sobs quieted. She sniffled, wiping her face. So is that it? Are we divorcing? He swallowed the lump in his throat. Yes, I've already decided. I'll contact a lawyer Monday. You should probably move out for a while. She gasped, heartbreak raw in her eyes. I have nowhere to go. I can't just stay with your mother or your friend or Carter if he'll have you, Seth said bitterly. But you can't stay here like nothing happened. Helen trembled, nodding slowly. I'll pack some things, she whispered, voice hollow. She stood unsteadily, eyes flicking around as though memorizing the house they once shared. Seth watched as she disappeared into the bedroom. He sank onto the couch again, burying his face in his hands. He heard muffled sounds of drawers opening, a suitcase zipper. It felt surreal, as if he were floating outside his body, observing a scene from a tragic drama. Eventually, Helen emerged with a small suitcase. She paused near the door, meeting his gaze one last time. I'm so sorry, Seth. I know it means nothing now, but I am. He nodded, tears threatening. Goodbye, Helen. She bit her lip, tears welling again, then turned and left. The door closed softly, leaving Seth alone in the silence. For a while, he just sat there, staring into space. The whiskey's buzz had faded, leaving him hollow and numb. He heard her car start up outside, the engine revving, and then she was gone. For how long, he didn't know. He realized he was now truly alone in this house. The marriage he once cherished lay in ruins. The final confrontation had been raw, painful, and swift. A swirl of relief and devastation coexisted in his chest. Slowly, he grabbed his phone, scrolling for a local divorce attorney recommended by a friend. He found the number, saved it, and typed a note to call on Monday. Meanwhile, he sat there, grappling with waves of sorrow. For a moment, he considered phoning Bryce just to vent, but he suspected the PI had done his job. This was now a personal matter. By midnight, exhaustion overwhelmed him. He wandered aimlessly through the half-empty house, noticing small details that reminded him of Helen, her slippers by the bed, a stray hair tie on the bathroom sink. Each item felt like a ghost. He gathered them into a plastic bag, shoving it aside in the closet. Out of sight, out of mind, he thought bitterly. He took a quick shower, letting the hot water soothe tense muscles, but it couldn't wash away the heartbreak. Crawling into bed alone, the sheets felt cold and foreign. Sleep came in fits, haunted by fleeting dreams of better days. Chapter 9. A thick layer of morning fog blanketed the neighborhood when Seth stirred awake on the living room couch. Nearly 2 weeks had passed since the night Helen left, and in that time, the house took on an unfamiliar emptiness. Everything felt suspended, as if waiting for a verdict. After the confrontation at the coastal resort, Helen had packed enough belongings to spend nights with her mother, apparently. Seth wondered if she'd also found moments to be with Carter. The thought still burned, but each day the pain dulled marginally. He glanced around, noticing a few cardboard boxes he'd assembled. Yesterday, he'd begun the slow process of sorting out items: wedding albums, mementos, random keepsakes that once seemed precious. Now each artifact carried a sting. He'd left them half-finished, overwhelmed by memories. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, he checked his phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number, plus a text from Bryce. Update: Carter under scrutiny at work. Boss found out. Seth's heart quickened. Perhaps a measure of karma had arrived for the man who helped wreck his marriage. With a stiff sigh, he rose and headed to the kitchen. The floor was cold under his bare feet, the counters bare of any evidence Helen once used them daily. In a surge of bitterness, he realized how thoroughly she'd extricated herself from his routines. The only remainder was a silent bruise on his heart. He poured coffee, flipping open his laptop on the small dining table. Time to check emails. Top of the inbox was a message from the divorce attorney he'd consulted, a man named Gerald Price. They'd had one meeting so far, discussing strategy, assets, and how to handle the inevitable confrontation over finances. Seth had revealed his hidden fortune to Gerald, who then emphasized the importance of not letting Helen blindside him with extreme demands. Another email from Gerald requested more documentation of marital property, separate property, proof of her affair, and so forth. He typed a quick reply, indicating he'd gather more details soon. The entire process felt surreal. He'd always pictured divorces happening to other people, never imagining he'd face one. Then again, he never expected to catch his wife at a seaside resort with another man. With coffee in hand, he clicked on Bryce's text thread. Carter under scrutiny at work. Boss found out. He typed a response. How so? And waited. Within minutes, Bryce replied, rumors swirling. Some staff caught wind he's hooking up with a married coworker. It's created an HR fiasco. Seth's lips twisted in a half-bitter, half-satisfied expression. He had no illusions that it would heal his heartbreak. But if Carter faced real consequences, it felt just. He typed back, good to know. Keep me posted. An hour later, the phone buzzed again, Bryce calling this time. Seth answered, bracing himself for updates. Seth, Bryce began, I've been quietly monitoring Carter's situation. Word on the grapevine is that a formal complaint reached HR, claiming workplace misconduct, possibly from someone who suspected him and Helen hooking up on company time. The higher-ups are investigating. If they confirm he used business travel or hours for personal rendezvous, that could lead to disciplinary action or firing. Seth nodded, swirling his coffee. So he might lose his job. Potentially. However, if Helen cooperates with HR or denies it happened during work hours, they might not have enough to terminate him. Hard to say. A lot of offices have no fraternization policies, especially if Carter is at a higher level than Helen. Seth swallowed, recalling how Helen used to mention Carter being a senior analyst or something. He's not her direct supervisor, though, right? No, but he outranks her by a couple levels. HR might frown on that. Seth's voice dipped low. Well, it's out of my hands. He can rot for all I care. Bryce paused, tone gentling. How about you? You surviving over there? A hollow chuckle escaped Seth's throat. Surviving might be the word. I'm hammering out divorce details with a lawyer. It's draining. You got the evidence we compiled. Keep that close. If Helen tries to deny fault or push for an unfair settlement, you have ammo. Seth exhaled. Yeah. Thanks, Bryce. After the call ended, Seth stared at the living room boxes once more. The notion of dividing up a life's worth of possessions loomed. Legally, Helen might be entitled to half. But she didn't know about his silent wealth, carefully shielded under an LLC and separate accounts. In truth, Seth dreaded the day she learned the extent of his finances. She might come demanding it. But with Gerald's guidance, maybe he could protect most of it. He set aside the phone and forced himself to resume the packing. With each item framed photos from honeymoon beaches, ticket stubs from concerts, old holiday decorations, he found his chest aching. Some he set aside in a Helen box, figuring she might want them. Others he tossed, not wanting to keep painful reminders. Time passed, the morning sun climbing. Eventually, he realized it was nearly midday. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Martin from the car wash. Seth answered, forcing a polite greeting. Hey, Martin. Hey, buddy. Martin's voice carried concern. You still on indefinite leave? Willow asked. She's worried. Seth sighed. I do plan to come back soon, but maybe another week. Everything's chaotic. Understood. No pressure. Just checking on you, Martin said gently. We miss you around here. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. A pause crackled. Then Martin exhaled. You don't have to share details, but I heard well, rumor is you're going through it with your wife. If you ever need to vent, I'm here. Seth's throat tightened. He debated how much to reveal. Finally, he mumbled, Yeah, we're done. She cheated. I'm divorcing her. Martin let out a soft curse. Oh, Seth, I'm sorry. That sucks. Seth rubbed his temple. Sure does. But it's the reality. Martin's tone turned resolute. You'll get through it, man. If you need anything, money, a place to crash, a drinking buddy, just say the word. Emotion swelled in Seth's chest. Despite everything, he still had friends. Thanks, Martin. Means a lot. After hanging up, Seth stood at the window, gazing out at the quiet suburban street. For a moment, he contemplated returning to the car wash soon. Maybe burying himself in routine tasks might help quell the heartbreak. On the other hand, he still felt raw, uncertain if the daily hustle would help or worsen the mental toll. Lost in thought, he startled at a sudden ring of the doorbell. He peered through the peephole. Helen's mother, Luna, stood on the porch, wearing a worried expression. A wave of conflicting feelings crashed over him. Luna had always been kind, even if her daughter had not. He opened the door, heart hammering. Mrs. Brenner? Luna offered a shaky smile. Seth, hi. May I come in? He hesitated but stepped aside. Luna walked in, glancing around the half-empty living room. She clasped her hands, face etched with concern. How are you holding up? She asked softly. Seth's jaw tensed. Been better. She sighed, eyes roaming the room. Helen's staying with me. She's well, she's distraught, to put it mildly. Seth's bitterness flared, but he clamped it down. I'm sure she is, after what happened. Luna nodded sadly. I'm not here to defend her actions, Seth. I just want to see if there's any chance at all you two might reconcile. She's in a terrible state, regrets everything. A wave of anger and heartbreak rose in Seth's chest. Forgive me if I'm not feeling generous, he said dryly. I can't just pretend she didn't cheat. Luna grimaced. No, of course not, I understand. But Helen said you discovered them at some resort? She was being foolish. She lost her head, now she's begging for forgiveness. Seth folded his arms. Well, I'm not giving it. She made her choice. I'm filing for divorce. Luna inhaled shakily. Seth, I know it's your decision, but sometimes marriages recover from affairs if both parties try. I don't want to lose you as a son-in-law. You're a good man. Our families have been close. Are you absolutely certain there's no hope? Seth's throat constricted. He recalled how Luna used to joke that she was lucky to have such a caring son-in-law. Now it felt like a distant dream. Certain, he whispered. Trust is gone. Without trust, what's left? She destroyed that. Tears glistened in Luna's eyes. I see. Then there's something else. Helen is worried about finances. She's uncertain if you'll leave her destitute. Seth stifled a bitter laugh. She worried I'll leave her destitute? She's the one who walked out. She works full-time, has a stable job, and let's not forget Carter might be there for her. She won't starve. Luna pressed her lips. She said you refused to discuss any settlement. She's afraid you'll use your resources to punish her. He narrowed his eyes. She told you about my money? That was a slip-up, but Luna shook her head quickly. No, not exactly, but she suspects you've saved more than she realized. She's not sure how big your finances are, but she's guessing you might fight dirty in the divorce. Seth took a step back, heart pounding, so Helen was starting to wonder about his finances. He forced a cool tone. I'm not fighting dirty. I'll ensure the legalities are followed, but she shouldn't expect a big payday. She won't get spousal support if I prove infidelity. Luna exhaled. That's what she's worried about. Carter's job is in jeopardy too, from what I hear, so it's not like he can support her financially if it all goes south. Seth's anger rose at the mention of Carter. So now she's realizing the consequences. Boo-hoo! She should have thought of that before hooking up with him. Luna's eyes brimmed with tears. I'm sorry this is so ugly, Seth. I truly wish it hadn't happened. If you need anything from me, let me know. All I ask is please, don't ruin her life out of vengeance. She's already broken. For a moment, Seth's fury wavered. Luna was a mother pleading for her daughter. He rubbed his face wearily. I won't sabotage her out of pettiness, but I also won't let her walk away with half my life savings, not after what she did. I have a lawyer. Let them handle it. Luna nodded, looking defeated. Thank you, Seth. I know you're hurting. If there's ever a chance you want to talk, call me. I still think of you like family. He pressed his lips together, stifling a surge of emotion. Appreciate it, Mrs. Brenner. She laid a gentle hand on his shoulder before heading to the door. Take care, she murmured, stepping out. He closed the door quietly, leaning against it with a heavy sigh. In the aftermath of Luna's visit, Seth felt his resolve strengthen. He wouldn't be swayed by tears or guilt trips. Even if part of him pitied Helen's predicament, she'd chosen her path. The rest of the day, he immersed himself in tasks, scanning financial documents for his lawyer, sorting old receipts, drafting a timeline of the affair evidence. The mechanical chores offered a semblance of control. By late afternoon, he'd compiled a digital folder, bank statements, tax returns, the car wash pay stubs, plus the private investment portfolio that had ballooned over the years. He decided to keep that separate, only disclosing bits necessary for legal compliance. There was no reason for Helen to discover the full extent of his hidden $1 million fortune. A short break to stretch, then he emailed everything to Gerald Price, adding a note. She's anxious about money. We must be prepared. He closed the laptop, letting out a shaky breath. This is happening, he reminded himself. I'm heading for a divorce, my marriage of 4 years. Gone. Later that night, he heated up a frozen meal. The beep of the microwave jolted him from gloomy ruminations. Slumping at the dining table, he picked at the bland dinner. In that moment, a wave of loneliness hit him. The house felt like a tomb, silent, unresponsive. No Helen's laughter or complaining about his cooking. Just his own dismal thoughts. He forced the food down, then stared out the window at the evening sky. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in bruised oranges. Would life ever feel normal again? He pictured a future without Helen maybe traveling, or focusing on the car wash for some normalcy. The idea felt both freeing and hollow, yet beneath the grief, a flicker of possibility emerged. He no longer had to tiptoe around her hostility or wonder about her calls with Carter. He was free in a sense. The heartbreak was raw, but at least no new betrayals waited in the shadows. That same night, around 10 p.m., his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number again. He debated ignoring it, but something nudged him to pick up. A hesitant female voice spoke. Seth? This is Jim Beckman's wife. Seth's brow furrowed in confusion. Who? Jim Beckman, Carter Beckman's wife, or ex-wife. I'm not sure. My name is Jane. We haven't met. I got your number from Bryce. I hope that's okay. His heart lurched. Carter's wife was calling him? This was unexpected. I see. I had no idea Carter was Jim to you. He told us he was separated or something. Jane gave a short, bitter laugh. He's lied about a lot. Look, I'm calling because Bryce said you might have evidence of his affair with your wife, soon to Beeks. And it's messing up my life, too. My children are impacted. Seth tightened his grip on the phone. I'm sorry, that's rough. Carter told me you were separated. Are you still legally married? Yes, Jane said wearily. He moved out months ago, claiming we needed space. But we never officially divorced. Then I found out about his fling with someone at the office. Bryce confirmed it was your wife. I confronted Carter and he admitted it but claimed it ended. Obviously not if they were at a resort recently. Seth sank onto the couch, stunned at this new angle. So you're dealing with the same betrayal from Carter's side? Jane's voice quivered with exhaustion. Yes. I have 2 kids with him. He's used marital funds for these escapades. I'm furious. The kids are confused, and I'm stuck in a half limbo. I want a divorce too, but he tries to guilt me about child support. I was hoping any evidence you have could help me legally. Bryce mentioned you might share. Seth hesitated. Part of him felt an odd kinship with Jane, both spouses blindsided. He was reluctant to share sensitive files, but if it aided her in a custody dispute, maybe it was the right thing to do. I do have some proof, pictures, recordings, enough to confirm Carter used work hours for personal rendezvous. Might help you. Jane exhaled shakily. I'd be grateful. Carter's neglected child support obligations even while spending money on fancy trips. If I can show the court he's lying about finances, it'll protect my kids. Seth closed his eyes, recalling how Carter's arrogance had fueled his rage. I'll talk to my lawyer. I suspect we can share some evidence. I want that jerk to face consequences. Jane's tone softened. Thank you. I'm sorry we have to meet under these circumstances. I hope we both find justice. And maybe peace. A lump rose in Seth's throat. Same to you. I'll be in touch once I confirm with my attorney how best to proceed. They exchanged contact info, then ended the call. Seth sat there for a long moment, absorbing the twist. So Carter had a wife and kids. He's even more of a scumbag than I realized, Seth thought. The idea that Carter had threatened the stability of his own children's home while romancing Helen made Seth's blood boil anew. Yet he also felt a sliver of purpose. Maybe together Jane and I can show the courts the truth, he mused. Because even if Helen tried to claim some moral high ground in the divorce, the documented betrayal with Carter was undeniable, and Carter's double life might sink him deeper into legal trouble if Jane pressed for spousal or child support. Seth found an odd sense of solidarity. He wasn't alone in the betrayal inflicted by Carter and Helen. Another victim was out there, fighting her own painful battle. Chapter 10. The next morning, Seth emailed his lawyer, Gerald Price, outlining the unexpected call from Carter's wife, Jane Beckman. He asked whether it would be legal or advantageous to share evidence with her for her own divorce proceedings. Gerald responded within hours. As long as the evidence is your property and does not violate privacy laws, you can share it. Typically, personal recordings that do not break wiretap statutes are permissible. However, consider the potential blowback from Helen, who might claim you're spreading her personal details. Let's be strategic. Seth mulled it over. If sharing the evidence with Jane helped her secure a better custody or child support arrangement, it might also put additional pressure on Carter. And the more chaos Carter faced, the less stable a partner he might be for Helen, which ironically could push her to demand more from Seth. Still, Seth felt morally compelled to help Jane. She had kids. Carter's betrayal had left her struggling. Throughout the day, Seth busied himself with errands. He visited the bank, spoke with a financial advisor about reorganizing certain assets to keep them safe. The advisor suggested setting up a trust, or at least ensuring that nothing was in a joint account with Helen's name. Seth had done that from the start. His hidden fortune was never in a joint account, but double-checking gave him peace of mind. He also swung by the car wash around lunchtime. Martin greeted him warmly, with a strong pat on the back. A few co-workers, who'd always been friendly, expressed relief seeing him. Willow asked if he planned to resume shifts soon. Seth said he'd be back next Monday, wanting a routine to cling to. In truth, the car wash's everyday tasks might help distract him from the swirling legal drama. He found solace in the idea that normalcy could return, even if his personal life was in shambles. By late afternoon, he received a text from a number he recognized as Helen's. "We need to talk about next steps. I'm not meeting a lawyer until next week. Please, can we sit down calmly?" His stomach nodded. He typed a cautious reply. "Email me your concerns or go through our attorneys. I don't see a point in meeting face-to-face." Her response arrived swiftly. "Please, Seth. For 4 years, we've shared everything. Don't shut me out. Just one conversation. If it goes nowhere, fine." He clenched his jaw, recalling her tearful pleas. Despite his anger, curiosity tugged at him. Maybe it was about dividing property or retrieving the rest of her stuff. He exhaled, typing, "Fine. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. at the house. Keep it civil." The next day, around 2:50 p.m., Seth tidied the living room, not wanting to appear disorganized in front of Helen. He felt an unsettling mixture of dread and resolve. The clock ticked toward 3, and sure enough, at 2:58, her car pulled up outside. He steeled himself, opening the door before she could knock. Helen stood there wearing jeans and a simple blouse, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Her eyes were rimmed with fatigue. She gave a tight nod. "Hi." "Come in," he said, stepping aside. She walked in, glancing around at the changes. The boxes, the rearranged furniture. She swallowed hard, likely noticing half her decorative touches removed. They settled in the living room, perched on opposite ends of the couch. Silence thickened the air. Finally, Helen spoke softly. "Thank you for letting me come. I know we ended badly, but we have to figure out how to handle practical stuff." Seth nodded tersely. "Yes, we do." She fiddled with her hands, gaze dropping. "I'm staying at Mom's. I guess we're not continuing the lease or living arrangement. Should I gather the rest of my clothes, or do you want me to do that after the lawyers talk?" He shrugged. "You can take them. I have no use for them, obviously." She nodded, voice shaky. "All right. I wanted to talk about the finances. I know you said you won't pay spousal support, but I hope we can settle something fair. I'm not trying to milk you, I swear." His eyes flashed with skepticism. "Define fair. You cheated. Typically, that means no spousal support in many states, especially if I can prove it's the reason for the marriage breakdown." Helen looked near tears. "Yes, I know, but I contributed to this household. We shared bills, responsibilities. I don't want to be left with nothing, especially since Carter's job is unstable." Seth stiffened at the mention of Carter. "So you're factoring Carter's job into your finances? That's not my problem, Helen." She pressed her lips together. "I'm not with Carter now, not in the same sense. After you left the resort, everything blew up. HR demanded statements from both of us. It's a nightmare." He let out a short bark of laughter. "Could have seen that coming." Helen's face crumpled. "He told me he was separated from his wife, that their divorce was nearly final. But now I hear she's fighting him in court. Everything is messy. I feel like a fool. He's not stable. I'm not sure I can trust him." Seth's anger flared. "Pardon me if I don't shed tears for your predicament with Carter." A tremor ran through Helen's shoulders. "I know. I brought this on myself. But please, can we at least discuss splitting the house equity or furniture? Something so I don't end up couch surfing forever?" Seth inhaled, forcing composure. "I'm not heartless. We can negotiate property division. That's standard. But if you expect half my bank accounts, think again." Helen's eyes flickered. "I never said half. We do have a small savings account together, only a few thousand. I'd like a portion, enough to secure a new place eventually." He nodded stiffly. "Fine. We can formalize that with attorneys. As for the furniture, I'm open to letting you take some pieces if you want." She bowed her head. "Thank you." A beat passed in tense quiet. "Seth, I really am sorry. If I could rewind time, I would." He studied her face, noticing the raw regret. "Too late," he said hoarsely. "Regret doesn't erase what you did." Helen's cheeks glistened with tears. "I know. I destroyed us. I guess I was just hoping maybe you'd find a fraction of forgiveness eventually." His heart twisted. He thought of the times they'd shared love and laughter, but the betrayal overshadowed that. Forgiveness is a big word. Maybe I'll find peace one day. But we can't be together anymore. She nodded miserably, tears dripping off her chin. "I understand." She cleared her throat, swiping her eyes. "So the last thing I wanted to bring up. I heard from Carter that you might be giving evidence to his wife, Jane. Is that true?" Seth's jaw tensed. Carter told her. Why do you care? Helen shook her head, voice trembling. Because that evidence includes me, my face, my actions. If that's submitted in court, it might become public record. My reputation, my career could be devastated. Seth let out a cold laugh. Worried about your reputation, huh? Wish you'd thought of that earlier. She winced. I did a terrible thing, but do you need to ruin me further by letting Carter's wife use your evidence? I can't imagine the scandal. His chest burned with anger. Helen, it was your affair. You put yourself in that scandal. I have no moral duty to shield you from the consequences. Her lips trembled. So you'll share it with her? He shrugged. I might. She's also a victim. Carter messed up her family. If my evidence helps her get fair child support or custody, I don't see why not. Helen's tears fell faster. Please, Seth, don't. My entire professional life is on the line. I could lose my job if the firm sees my involvement in a workplace affair. I'm begging you, whatever I did to you, you can punish me, but don't destroy my career. I'm not Carter. He manipulated me. He raised a hand to cut off her protest. Manipulated you? Sure, maybe, but you still chose to lie. You risked your own job. That's on you. She drew in a shaky breath, desperation in her eyes. I'll do anything, Seth. I'll agree to minimal property claims, sign off on no spousal support, whatever you want. Just don't let that evidence go to Jane. I can't handle that fallout. Seth studied her tear-streaked face. Part of him felt a flicker of pity. Another part recoiled at the same old manipulative pleas. So you want to cut a deal to keep me from handing over the truth? Helen swallowed, then nodded silently. For a long moment, he just stared at her. She was offering to walk away quietly, claim minimal assets, so long as he kept her involvement from being used in Carter's wife's case. Is that fair? On one hand, it might expedite the divorce, leaving him financially secure. On the other hand, Carter's wife and kids deserved justice. If he withheld evidence, was he complicit in letting Carter off easier? He inhaled slowly, wrestling with the moral quandary. Helen, I'm not sure. Jane has children who need support. If Carter tries to dodge responsibilities or manipulates the court, my evidence might prevent that. Are you really asking me to turn a blind eye for your own sake? Her voice cracked. I don't want Carter off the hook, but maybe there's a way to supply evidence that proves his wrongdoing without dragging me explicitly into it. Or at least keep my identity private. I'm terrified I'll lose my entire career. Seth clenched his jaw. We'll see. I'm discussing it with my lawyer. Maybe there's a compromise, but I promise nothing. Helen nodded, tears falling afresh. Okay, thank you. That's all I can ask. She slowly rose from the couch. I'll gather the rest of my clothes now, if that's all right. He gestured for her to proceed. She trudged to the bedroom, leaving him reeling in the living room. Emotions churned anger, pity, moral conflict. What do I do? The idea of letting Carter slip away from full accountability felt wrong. But was it worth burying Helen in the process? Minutes later, she reappeared with a suitcase. They parted with minimal words. She walked out, shoulders slumped, a ghost of the woman he once loved. The door closed softly, leaving him with the hush of an empty house yet again. He sank into a chair, phone in hand, mind spinning. Should I mention Helen's request to Gerald? Absolutely. So he dialed the lawyer's number. Gerald answered in a crisp tone. Seth explained Helen's proposition. She'd accept minimal property claims if he withheld or limited evidence from Carter's wife, or at least protected Helen's identity. Gerald listened, then sighed. You're in a unique position, Seth, the lawyer said. From a purely strategic standpoint, if you want your divorce to finalize smoothly, leveraging that evidence is a tool. Helen's clearly anxious. She might sign a favorable settlement in exchange for your promise not to publicly share certain details. Seth frowned. But morally, Carter's wife is counting on me. She has kids to support. Gerald's voice softened. I understand. There might be ways to anonymize some evidence so it highlights Carter's wrongdoing without explicitly identifying Helen. But realistically, any court document referencing an affair usually identifies the participants. Helen can't expect total secrecy. That's naive. However, we could craft a limited statement focusing on Carter's betrayal, with minimal references to Helen's identity. Seth leaned back, exhaling. So you're saying a partial compromise is possible? Yes, But you must decide how strongly you feel about assisting Carter's wife. If you want to ensure Carter faces maximum fallout, you share everything. If you want to protect Helen's professional future somewhat, you can do a redacted version. Bear in mind, if Carter sees the evidence, he'll likely name Helen anyway. So how effective is partial anonymity? Hard to say. Seth pinched his brow. This is messy. Welcome to divorce, Gerald said dryly. Think carefully about your priorities. If Helen's anxious enough, she'll sign beneficial terms to finalize your divorce quickly. That spares you a drawn-out court battle, but you might sacrifice your desire to see Carter fully exposed. They ended the call with the plan to weigh pros and cons. Seth sighed, feeling the weight of a moral and strategic decision pressing down. He loathed Carter, but also recognized punishing him might inadvertently ruin Helen's job. Did she deserve that level of devastation? She cheated, yes, but maybe not to the point of losing her livelihood. Carter's the bigger manipulator. Over the next few days, Seth stewed on it. He occasionally texted Jane, who updated him that Carter was trying to settle out of court to avoid a messy trial. She asked if he was ready to share the incriminating videos. Seth stalled, replying, still considering how to present them. Meanwhile, Helen sent him a few polite messages about finalizing the property division. She sounded urgent, hoping to keep him from handing over anything that identified her in detail. At times, Seth almost felt manipulated. Is she playing me or genuinely frightened of losing her job? Possibly both. He confided bits of the dilemma to Martin, who simply said, "Man, do what feels right. Don't let her guilt you, but also don't become the monster you hate." That resonated. Don't become Carter, Seth told himself. He wanted accountability, not senseless revenge. Eventually, Seth asked Gerald to draft a settlement proposal for Helen. She'd take no spousal support, minimal property claims, and sign a no-contest divorce. In exchange, Seth would agree that the evidence he provided to Carter's wife be partially redacted, focusing on Carter's wrongdoing, with blurred images of Helen's face. Enough to prove Carter cheated, but not so explicit that Helen's identity was glaringly revealed in court documents. Gerald considered it feasible, though he warned, "There's no guarantee Carter's lawyers won't find a way to identify Helen. But at least from our side, we can claim we tried to protect her anonymity." Seth felt uneasy Carter might name her anyway, but perhaps Carter, to protect his own job, would avoid drawing more attention. With a resigned sigh, Seth gave Gerald the go-ahead. This might be the best middle ground. When Helen received the settlement proposal, she requested a meeting with her own attorney present. Seth agreed. They all convened in a neutral conference room at Price Law offices. Gerald, Helen, and her attorney, a stern woman named Cynthia Morales, sat around a polished table. Seth tried to keep his composure, glancing occasionally at Helen's downcast eyes. Gerald explained the gist. Seth will refrain from explicitly naming Helen in the evidence shared with Miss Beckman, using partial redaction. In return, Helen waives spousal support, claims only a fair portion of the joint bank account, and we finalize an uncontested divorce. Cynthia studied the draft. We see Helen also gets the living room set and half the kitchen appliances? Gerald nodded. Yes, that's correct. She's also free to keep her personal items, clothes, cosmetics, etc. Nothing more. Helen swallowed audibly. And the anonymity part. I want to ensure any photos or videos that show my face are blurred. That's crucial for me. Gerald steepled his fingers. We can do that from our side. However, if Carter's attorneys receive unblurred copies or if he testifies that it was Helen, that's out of Seth's control. We can't muzzle Carter or his wife. We only promise not to distribute or present the unredacted images ourselves. Cynthia nodded slowly. Understood. We'd prefer a clause stating Seth cannot publicly share unredacted material, possibly an NDA regarding the affair specifics. Gerald raised an eyebrow. He's open to that if Helen abides by her side. No further financial demands, no spousal support, no attempt to claim hidden assets. A clean break. Helen's eyes brimmed with tears, but she nodded. Okay, I just want this done. I want to move on, rebuild my life. A wave of conflicting emotions coursed through Seth. This was the official unraveling of their marriage, hammered out in legal terms. He could see the pain in Helen's face, though he also recalled her brazen deception. Steeling himself, he said, I agree to the partial redactions, but if Carter tries to weasel out of child support by disclaiming the affair, I might have to revise the evidence. Understood? Helen's voice quivered. Yes, I get it. Cynthia jotted notes. We'll finalize language clarifying that scenario. With that, the lawyers began drafting the final document. Seth realized it was nearly over. This ugly chapter would soon become a legal footnote. Relief and sorrow mingled in his chest. They wrapped up after an hour, each side reviewing the typed agreement. Helen signed with trembling hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. Seth signed more stoically, though his stomach churned. The lawyers then set a timeline for filing the uncontested divorce with the court. Within a couple of months, they'd be legally single. As they stood to leave, Helen brushed past him in the hallway, muttering a soft, "Goodbye." He gave a curt nod, not trusting himself to speak. Then he watched her walk away, shoulders slumped in regret. So much for us, he thought, an ache settling in his gut. Gerald patted Seth's arm. You did well. This is about as clean as it can get. Seth exhaled. I guess so. Let's hope it holds. They parted ways. Outside, a bright sun stung Seth's eyes. He blinked at the glare, realizing in a few short months he'd be divorced. The rest of the day felt like he was underwater, everything muted. At least it's progress, he told himself. Chapter 11. Over the ensuing weeks, Seth tried to return to a semblance of normal life. He resumed shifts at the car wash, earning sighs of relief from Willow and friendly jokes from Martin. Customers came and went, their mundane car cleaning needs oddly comforting to Seth. The swirl of betrayal receded from the forefront of his mind while he scrubbed tires or vacuumed interiors. Still, the legal process lurked. He and Helen had signed the settlement, but it required court filing, a mandatory waiting period, and a brief final hearing. Meanwhile, from Bryce's occasional texts, Seth learned that Carter's wife, Jane, was proceeding with her own suit. She'd accepted the partial redaction, though Carter's side likely wouldn't remain ignorant of Helen's identity for long. Even so, the official evidence that reached the judge wouldn't name Helen openly, focusing on Carter's repeated misdeeds and financial misconduct. One afternoon, Seth found himself alone in the break room, sipping a soda. Martin poked his head in. Hey man, the next car's pulling up if you're free. Sure, Seth said, standing. But Martin lingered, a hesitant look in his eyes. Seth, is it true you're finalizing the divorce soon? Martin asked quietly. Seth nodded. Yeah, we signed an agreement. Just waiting on the court date. Martin gave a gentle nod. You okay with that? A bitter half-smile flickered across Seth's face. It's never easy, but I'm at peace with it now. She cheated, Martin. I can't stay married to that. Martin patted his shoulder. Understood. Well, if you ever want to hang out, I'm off this weekend. Beer's on me. Seth's chest warmed at the supportive gesture. Appreciate it. Might take you up on that. They returned to work, the day passing swiftly. Later that evening, after a long shift, Seth drove home through a mild drizzle. He was surprised to find a lone figure waiting on his front porch, Jane Beckman, wearing a raincoat. The overhead porch light illuminated her anxious expression. He parked, stepping out warily. Jane, everything okay? She offered a tense smile. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. Bryce gave me your address. I tried calling, but maybe you missed it. Mind if we talk? He recalled silencing his phone earlier at work. Sure, he said, unlocking the front door. Come in. They settled in the living room, the hum of the rain forming a backdrop. Jane looked around, noticing the half-empty shelves. You're, packing up a lot? Seth shrugged. Dividing stuff. She took some things. I'm just reorganizing. She nodded, focusing. I came because Carter's lawyers are still being slippery about finances. They claim he can't afford child support. He's using half-truths about being separated from me for a year, so the affair with your wife is not relevant. I suspect if we show evidence of him hooking up on business hours, we can push the judge for a bigger support order. But I wanted to confirm you're still open to letting me present the partial evidence you provided. Seth inhaled. Yes, I am. But we agreed it would be partially redacted to not fully name Helen. Officially, she's a co-worker. Carter might guess it's her, but from my side, we're not providing direct identification. That was the deal. Jane's eyes reflected gratitude. Thank you. Even that helps. If the court sees Carter used work hours, possibly even work funds for personal trysts, it undermines his claim of poverty. The judge might see he's lying about finances. Seth set his jaw. He deserves every bit of backlash. If it helps you secure fair support for your kids, I'm glad. Jane exhaled, relief evident. I appreciate it, Seth. The hearing's next month. My lawyer will request your official statement confirming the timeline. We won't mention your ex-wife's name. That's your call, but we can bury it. He gave a curt nod. Sure. I'll do a sworn affidavit about what Bryce documented. Carter's secret trips, lunches on company time, the resort fiasco. That's enough to show he's not exactly financially strapped. Jane's lip trembled. You don't know how much this means to me. My kids, they deserve better than Carter's manipulations. Seth felt a pang of empathy. I'm sorry you and your kids are stuck in this. For what it's worth, I know how betrayal stings. She offered a sad smile. We're both in the same boat, I guess. Let's hope the courts do right by us. They talked a bit more, hashing out details. Then Jane rose, preparing to leave. On impulse, Seth asked, How are your kids holding up? Jane's face clouded with pain. They're confused. They miss their dad, but they see he's not around much. He visits sporadically, but the tension is huge. I'm trying to keep them from hating him, but it's tough. Seth nodded, heart heavy. I get it. Best of luck. If you need anything else, let me know. She thanked him and departed into the drizzle. He closed the door, a swirl of emotions coursing through him. At least I can help those kids get the support they need, he thought. Maybe that's a tiny silver lining in this mess. Days turned into weeks. At last, the final hearing date for Seth's uncontested divorce arrived. He dressed in a simple button-down shirt and slacks, his heart pounding with a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the county courthouse. Gerald had assured him it would be brief, just verifying no disputes remained, then the judge would sign off. He arrived early, waiting in a corridor outside the courtroom. Helen came shortly after, accompanied by Cynthia. She wore a subdued dress, face pale. They exchanged a stiff nod, neither speaking. The clerk eventually ushered them in. Before a tired-looking judge, they confirmed the settlement. Gerald presented the signed documents. The judge asked routine questions about irreconcilable differences, no hidden disputes. Seth forced calm answers. Helen nodded tearfully. The entire process took under 10 minutes. Finally, the judge said, I find the grounds valid. The marital settlement is approved. Your divorce is granted effective immediately. With a stamp of papers, it was done. Seth's shoulders felt oddly weightless and burdened at the same time. Helen stifled a sob, covering her mouth. Seth stood there, numb, unsure if he should speak. The judge gave them both a curt nod, then motioned for the next case. They slipped out, stepping into the hallway as newly single individuals. Cynthia murmured something to Helen and departed. Gerald patted Seth's arm, congratulated him quietly, and stepped away to take a phone call. That left Seth and Helen momentarily alone in the hallway, the swirl of courthouse staff walking around them. She glanced at him, tears brimming. So that's it then. We're not husband and wife anymore. He inhaled, feeling an ache. Seems so. She opened her mouth, searching for words. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. Again. And I do hope you find happiness, Seth. A lump lodged in his throat. You too, he managed. Though I doubt Carter will bring you that, he silently added. She sniffled. I'm moving to a small apartment next month. I guess this is goodbye for real. He nodded. Yeah, take care. He turned away, not wanting to prolong the awkward farewell. She lingered a second, then padded off, footsteps echoing. Gerald rejoined him, handing him final copies of the decree. Seth, you're officially divorced now, Gerald said gently. How do you feel? Seth stared at the papers in his hand. Mixed, but freer. Gerald nodded. That's normal. If any issues arise about enforcing the settlement, let me know. Seth thanked him, then left the courthouse. Outside, a crisp autumn sun lit the steps. He realized he was free, no more waiting, no more illusions. The heartbreak might linger, but the legal tether was cut. He took a deep breath and descended the steps, each footstep feeling lighter than the last. In the following days, he quietly updated his close friends, Martin, Willow, a handful of others that he was now officially single again. Some offered condolences, others joked about welcome back to the bachelor club, trying to lighten the mood. Seth accepted it all with a subdued nod. Meanwhile, he continued working at the car wash, focusing on small joys. A satisfied customer's grin, a well-waxed finish on a sleek sedan. Helen largely vanished from his sphere. He heard she was still employed but had changed departments to avoid Carter, though the rumor mill suggested they occasionally saw each other. Carter's HR investigation lingered, and the scuttlebutt said he might resign rather than face potential firing. None of it seemed to matter to Seth now. One afternoon, as Seth was cleaning a vintage Mustang, a text arrived from Jane. "We had the hearing. Carter tried to deny everything, but your redacted footage, Bryce's timeline, sealed the deal. Judge sided with me on child support. Thank you." Seth smiled slightly, a sense of vindication warming him. At least Carter didn't escape scot-free. He typed back, "Glad it helped. Wishing you and your kids the best." She replied with a heartfelt thanks and a promise to keep in touch if needed. He put the phone away, satisfied that at least one decent outcome came from the ashes of betrayal. As the weeks rolled on, Seth found a new rhythm. The divorce no longer loomed over him like a storm cloud. He had the final decree filed, half the furniture gone, a calmer household. A sense of renewal crept into his daily life. He started jogging in the mornings, exploring potential side investments with his hidden wealth. He even toyed with the idea of traveling overseas, something he'd always postponed. One evening, Martin invited him out to a local bar for a beer. No pity party, just casual fun. Seth agreed, surprising himself with a readiness to socialize again. They sat in a corner booth, sipping cold ones, the neon signs reflecting on polished wood. Martin raised his glass. "To your new chapter, man. It was a rough road, but you're still standing." Seth clinked glasses. "Yeah, guess I am." He swallowed the beer, savoring the malty taste. "Sometimes I can't believe it's all behind me. Feels like a dream." Martin offered a sympathetic grin. "You handled it better than most would. She messed up big time. Now you have a chance to start fresh." Seth gazed around the bar, noticing a few friendly faces from the neighborhood. A spark of possibility flickered. Maybe this was truly a second chance. No more tension, no more secrets. "I appreciate your support, buddy," he told Martin. "I don't know where I'd be without you guys at the car wash, letting me vanish whenever I needed." Martin shrugged. "We're friends. That's what we do." They talked about work, Martin's new hobby-building model airplanes, random jokes about obnoxious customers. Gradually, the dark cloud of heartbreak receded, replaced by laughter. It felt good, normal, a reminder that life continued. At the end of the evening, they parted ways with a warm handshake. Seth drove home under the streetlights, a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in months. Maybe healing was slow, but it was happening. He parked in his driveway, stepping out into the mild night air. The moon glowed overhead. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. "I'm divorced," he thought. "Single, free to shape my future." A wry smile touched his lips. "Look out, world. I'm not done yet." Chapter 12. A season changed, bringing crisp winds and turning leaves. Seth marked 6 months since his divorce finalization. The emotional wounds no longer felt raw. They'd matured into scars that occasionally ached but no longer bled. The house felt more like his domain, rearranged furniture reflecting a simpler style. He replaced the couch Helen had chosen with a comfortable recliner, indulging in small luxuries he'd denied himself before. During that time, Carter fully resigned from their shared workplace. Rumor had it he parted ways under an HR agreement. Helen, from what Seth gleaned, had also transferred to a different branch or department. They weren't publicly together anymore, though hush-hush rumors suggested sporadic contact. None of it concerned Seth. Their chapter had closed. He found new pursuits, tinkering with an online side business, investing in a local startup stuff he once considered but never followed through. Freed from the mental burden, he tapped into the potential of his hidden wealth. He also maintained an unwavering loyalty to the car wash, enjoying the grounding effect of honest labor. On a drizzly Saturday morning, Willow approached Seth near the office. "Hey, quick note. We're hosting a staff get-together next weekend. Just a small barbecue in my backyard. You in?" Seth considered, recalling how he'd missed the last staff gathering due to marital strife. Now he had no reason to skip. "Yeah, count me in." "Great," Willow said, smiling. "Beers, burgers, low-key fun. Bring a friend if you want." A fleeting thought crossed his mind. He didn't have a significant other to invite. For a moment, he felt a pang of loneliness. Then he brushed it off. "I'll just show up alone and have fun." He'd done plenty alone lately. That afternoon, while vacuuming a customer's SUV, Martin sidled up, wearing a playful grin. "Heard you're coming to the barbecue. Gonna be quite a turnout." Seth smirked. "Yeah, should be a blast." Martin leaned on the door. "A friend of Willow's is single. She asked if I could nudge you into meeting her. You open to that?" Seth froze. Dating. The concept felt alien. He'd barely been single for half a year, still carrying emotional baggage. "I'm not sure I'm ready," he admitted. Martin shrugged. "No pressure, man. Just letting you know, sometimes new faces can lead to new sparks." He forced a light chuckle. "Let's see, I'm not opposed to meeting people." Inside, his heart thumped. The idea of stepping into the dating world trying to trust again was both terrifying and intriguing. Maybe a casual conversation wouldn't hurt, he mused. By the time the weekend barbecue arrived, Seth found himself at Willow's backyard, the aroma of grilled burgers mingling with laughter. A modest group of co-workers sipped beers, chatted, played lawn games. Martin was flipping patties at the grill, joking with a few staffers. Willow bustled around with condiments, greeting each newcomer. Seth helped arrange coolers, feeling oddly content. The sky was overcast, but no rain threatened, and the vibe was relaxed. After months of tension, he welcomed this carefree social environment. About an hour in, Willow introduced him to her friend, a warm-eyed woman named Dana. She was close to his age, with a friendly smile and easy laughter. They chatted about random topics, music tastes, local restaurants, funny car wash anecdotes. Seth felt a flutter in his stomach, a mixture of nervousness and mild attraction. Dana asked lightly, "So how long have you worked at the wash?" He sipped his soda. "A few years now. Started it to keep a low profile. I actually have some investments on the side." He avoided diving into the complicated backstory about his hidden wealth. She grinned. "Well, you must enjoy the simple life, right? Seems like a fun group here." He nodded. "They're like a second family." Martin passed by, winking at Seth with an exaggerated grin. Seth rolled his eyes but couldn't help smiling. Dana noticed and laughed softly. "Your friend thinks he's smooth, huh?" Seth chuckled. "He tries." They continued chatting, discovering a shared interest in old-school rock music and a mutual love of hiking. It was surprisingly comfortable. Yet in the back of Seth's mind, he remained cautious, painful memories of Helen's betrayal still lingered. Trusting someone again felt like a leap over a deep chasm. Still, as the evening wore on, he found himself genuinely enjoying Dana's company. Her laugh was infectious. Her curiosity about his daily life was genuine. When Martin teased them about sneaking off to the dessert table, Dana responded with a playful quip, and Seth felt warmth in his chest. Perhaps he wasn't doomed to permanent loneliness. Eventually, the barbecue wound down, folks trickling out. Dana prepared to leave, turning to Seth with a shy smile. "It was great talking to you. Maybe we can continue sometime? Grab coffee or a hike?" He hesitated only a second. "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers. With a quick wave, she slipped away, leaving Seth standing under the soft glow of Willow's porch light. Martin sidled up, grinning ear to ear. "You got her digits, huh? My work here is done." Seth rolled his eyes again, but with genuine fondness. "Don't get too smug." Still, he couldn't hide a small smile. In the following weeks, Seth texted Dana occasionally, sometimes meeting for a casual lunch or a short walk in the park. He kept it slow, not wanting to rush. She sensed his caution and never pried. They discovered a shared humor in mocking corny TV commercials, chatted about mundane joys like cooking or local events. For the first time in ages, Seth felt a gentle spark of hope for the future, like maybe companionship was possible again. He refrained from dumping all his divorce baggage on her, though he did mention he'd come out of a painful end to a marriage. She nodded sympathetically, not pressing further. That was exactly what Seth needed. Someone who didn't push him to bear every scar, but accepted him where he stood. One afternoon, after a pleasant lunch date with Dana, he returned home to find an envelope stuck in his mailbox. It was from Carter's wife, Jane. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "We won. Judge granted me full custody arrangement and fair child support. Thank you for your help. Hope you find happiness. Truly, Jane." Enclosed was a small photo of her two kids, grinning at a playground. Seth's eyes misted at the evidence of them thriving. He truly got what he deserved, Seth thought of Carter. The letter felt like closure for that side of the drama. Helen's unredacted cameo was never required, apparently. Seth tucked the note away. Maybe, in a strange cosmic sense, justice had partially been served. Carter wouldn't roam free from responsibilities. Meanwhile, Helen had relocated within the same city, presumably forging her own path. He felt no need to check up on her. One evening, after a relaxed dinner with Dana, they found themselves strolling a quiet lakeside path. The moon shimmered on the water, crickets chirping in the reeds. She slipped her hand into his, a shy gesture that made his heart flutter. He realized he was content in that moment, no swirling storm overhead. She gazed at him, a question in her eyes. "How do you feel about us?" He exhaled, pausing to gather words. "I'm cautious," he admitted. "I was hurt before, but I like spending time with you. I feel comfortable." A gentle smile touched her lips. "That's enough for now. We can take it slow. No pressure." He nodded, relief mingling with gratitude. Yes, slow is good. As weeks turned to months, their bond grew organically. Seth discovered he could share small pieces of his old heartbreak, and Dana listened with empathy, never judging. She revealed her own past relationship woes, forging a deeper connection. They remained unhurried, focusing on friendship that gradually blossomed into something sweeter. Meanwhile, the car wash thrived. Willow promoted Martin to a shift supervisor. Seth continued as a reliable anchor, occasionally taking days off to explore side ventures or short weekend getaways. He never again felt the oppressive dread that once shadowed him daily. One crisp autumn day, Seth found himself on a scenic hiking trail with Dana, the canopy of golden leaves overhead. As they walked, he reflected on how drastically life had changed in under a year. He'd gone from naive husband to a man scarred by betrayal to a newly divorced individual forging a fresh path. Now, he had a sense of peace he'd never imagined during the darkest days. They paused at a lookout point. The valley spread below, radiant in autumn hues. Dana snapped a few photos, then leaned against him, her warmth comforting. Seth wrapped an arm around her shoulders, exhaling contentedly. He recalled how he once believed betrayal might leave him jaded forever. But here, perched above a breathtaking vista, he felt hope. He'd proven that heartbreak didn't define him. He'd chosen not to remain bitter, channeling his pain into decisive action, exposing the affair, forging a fair divorce settlement, helping Carter's wife in her legal fight. Dana turned her face up toward his, a question in her eyes. Without overthinking, Seth bent down, pressing a light kiss to her lips. The forest air felt electric around them, leaves rustling like a whispered applause. It was a tender moment of affirmation, a sign that he was ready to let someone in again. No, it wouldn't erase the scars, but it showed him that trust and connection could grow anew. They broke apart, smiles lingering. Dana's cheeks were rosy, eyes shining. She murmured, "I like this." Seth's heart fluttered. "Me too," he whispered, slipping an arm around her waist. They resumed walking, footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. The horizon spread wide, beckoning with promise. In that instant, Seth realized he was on a new journey, one shaped not by bitterness, but by resilience. He'd confronted a cheating wife, endured heartbreak, navigated the messy fallout, and emerged on the other side, forging his own version of happiness. Life seldom tied up neatly, but sometimes closure wasn't about neat bows. It was about forging onward with courage. Carter and Helen might forever be a cautionary tale in his past, but they no longer occupied the center of his thoughts. The future stretched ahead, bright as the leaves, shimmering with possibilities. Back at the trailhead, as dusk gathered, Seth and Dana hopped into his sedan, heading back to the city. He caught a glimpse of himself in the rearview mirror, noticing a lightness in his eyes that hadn't been there for a long time. This is my new chapter, he thought, and I'm finally ready for it.